Good to see you all again.
Likewise.
I missed you.
And I, you, Tom.
Sure.
Hey, Joanne.
Yes, I still don't have video.
Well, your audio is very echoey as well, and I'm not sure why. It's kind of muddy and echoey, so maybe it's positioning, or I don't know.
Does that help?
You're a little muddy too there, Tom.
Yeah, well, I have allergies. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out in case you had to make any adjustments. That's all.
Okay. CNET is here. I'm going to go off and come back and see if I can fix my video. Meanwhile, we can go ahead and get started. And John is going to be introducing our guest this evening. I'll be back as quick as I can.
Okay, Joanne. Okay, folks, this evening we're going to have a presentation by the Penn State Sustainability group that this year has worked with us to evaluate. This will be the first phase of options for Talleyrand Park. So the group working under the direction of Dr. Megan Marshall. Our point of contact was Jamie Weichel. She's handled most of our point of contacts for the communications with the borough. And on the team was Tyler Scoden, Taylor Erickson, and Aaron Miller. They will be making a presentation of their project and providing a breakdown of what each member did. So I believe I'm turning this over to you, Jamie, at this time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for the lovely introduction. And I think Tyler has our slides, so he'll share them and we'll get started.
Making sure everyone can see the screen, the presentation.
Good.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so we're the four horsemen and women of Talleyrand. That was our team name we picked. I'm Aaron Miller, and then John introduced everyone.
All right. This is just some background information about the site and some problems with the site currently. So right now, Big Spring transports about 15 million gallons of water per day and functions as the primary drinking water source for the Bellefonte area. Spring Creek water levels fluctuate depending on the storm event, which Aaron will go into a little bit later in the presentation. Some problems currently at the site. It's dangerous for kayakers to cross the dam, and the peninsula is subjected to erosion along the banks and flooding of the entire landmass. And the erosion of the banks you can see in the top right image there. And the water temperatures are currently too high for the fish populations in that area as well.
Oh, when this project was assigned to us, there were multiple concerns in the park that the Bellefonte Borough was interested in us investigating. These include enhanced recreational opportunities at the park, such as kayaking and potentially fishing, reduce erosion at rock retaining wall and peninsula, reduce water temperatures of Spring Creek, and lower water levels upstream of the dam to prevent flooding at the peninsula.
So our student team acquired this project through the Sustainable Communities Collaborative, and they wanted projects to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And this project addresses goal number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities, since addressing the flooding situation in Talleyrand Park will help to increase the resiliency of Bellefonte and the park too. And also goal 14, life below water. This project addresses that because we're trying to improve the conditions for the trout in the area as well.
So from the objectives given, we did a lot of research and were able to compile a list of both water quality and dam peninsula modification target specifications. So on this slide is the water quality of Spring Creek, and our target specifications include a water temperature ideally between 45 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, dissolved oxygen values greater than or equal to 9 milligrams per liter, and iron levels less than 1.5 milligrams per liter. So now for the dam peninsula design, there are a lot more target specifications that we thought to include. Briefly, I'll just run through them, but water velocity at the dam notch should be between 0.5 and 1 feet per second. The Froude number at the dam should be less than 1. The height of drop should not exceed 4 feet. Currently, the overland erosion is 192.78 milligrams per hectare per year, but with the proposed peninsula plan, we aim to get the value down to 48.19. The critical shear stress on the stream bank ideally should be 0.84 pound per feet squared for grasses and trees, and 2.61 for live stakes. And then the velocity on the stream bank should be 3.51 feet per second for grasses and plants, and 6.56 for live stakes. The peninsula should be able to withstand up to a 25-year storm. And again, Aaron will talk about that in a minute. The natural material used around the peninsula will be 100%. There will be 5 to 8 different types of native plants and grasses planted around the peninsula area. The total lifespan of the solution should last at least 15 to 25 years. And finally, the cost we hope to remain under $200,000. Okay, so during the concept generation process of our design, we met with several experts, one being the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. Once meeting with them, we decided to have concept 1 as dam removal and mill dam trail implementation. The solution would allow for the safe passage of kayakers and promote fish populations because fish will now be able to spawn upstream. Also, removing the dam would allow for the stream to restore to their natural water levels, and this was highly talked about by the PA Fish and Boat Commission. In order to control the stream grade at this section of the stream, the concept would include a boulder step pool type fishway design. This will allow for stream features to be created such as ripples and pools, which are optimal for both fish and kayak passage. A photo of kind of what I'm talking about is there on the top right. The design will also decrease water levels near the grass peninsula, which will decrease the likelihood of ponding or flooding. The other benefit of the step pool is that it's a natural looking solution. Briefly, as you'll notice through the next couple of slides, all of our concepts will include native plants and trees being planted along the peninsula. So this will be fully discussed in detail later in the presentation. And then quickly, additionally, all the concepts will also include this mill dam trail implementation, which is constructing a historical plaque containing information about the recently removed or modified dam. On the plaque, the purpose of the original dam and the reason it was removed will be included, and a picture of the dam could even be etched in on the metal. And the trail could be named Old Mill Dam Trail in memory of the removed dam. And a picture of what we were kind of thinking about is right there shown on the bottom. Okay, concept 2 was implementing a notch dam and peninsula protection plan, which was suggested by the borough to be investigated. A big benefit of this design would allow the dam's original structure to remain intact. By creating a notch in the dam, experienced kayakers will have safe passage through the dam if the notch was designed to be large enough to do so. The image on the top right is a simple diagram of what a notch in the dam would look like. Another part of this design includes the implementation of kayak ramps upstream and downstream of the dam, so that if kayakers would rather not travel over the dam under high flow conditions, or they're not experienced enough to do so, they don't have to. With this design, there also have to be a small retaining wall on the edge of Spring Creek to help reduce erosion around the peninsula. This is because the water levels will not decrease as drastic as they would if you just remove the dam altogether. And again, native plants and trees would be planted along the peninsula, and the Mill Dam Trail name would be a part of this concept. Finally, concept 3 was to design a bypass channel along with the Peninsula Protection Plan. So after an email discussion with Penn State Biological Engineering alum, Kurt Smithgall, our team was informed that bypass channels are typically preferred over notching the dams. So bypass channels are used to divert stream flow from a point upstream and control water levels before returning them back to the original stream downstream. This design requires that the stream gradient would have to drop without water levels increasing too much in order for fish to be able to pass through without the dangerous hydraulic drought. So to solve this problem, a side channel as shown in that picture on the left right there would be constructed either on the bank or within the existing dam structure. And then also increasing channel roughness with brushes or coarse rock could help reduce velocities, and that's shown on the picture to the right. Again, the Peninsula Protection Plan would have to be included because water levels will not drop as much as they would with removing the dam. And again, the native plants and the Mill Dam Trail would be implemented. So after researching and discussing all 3 options, the team decided to investigate concept 1, which was dam removal with step pool design and Mill Dam Trail implementation. Some of the benefits that won us over about this concept included a permanent long-term solution. It was the safest solution for both kayak and fish passage. It would decrease flooding risk at the peninsula and the road. Native plants obviously promote bees and butterflies. There would be decreased maintenance and mowing in the park, decreased duck population, and kayak races can now start in Talleyrand, which would increase the usage of the park. And then also, according to the PA Fish and Boat Commission, the promotion of fish passage with this option would make it easier than if the dam were notched. So the borough agreed that we could investigate this option if a future capstone team could investigate another option for the dam solution.
So for us to get an accurate model of the stream, we did survey data right before the Thanksgiving break. So here are all the survey points we got on the stream. We got some below the dam, above the dam, and then we input this survey data into AutoCAD and then transfer that data from AutoCAD into HECRAS, which is a modeling program you'll see shortly. So we wanted to get discharges for design storms. At first, we tried doing it manually, but it wasn't working out because there's snow melt and a bunch of other factors to think about. So there's a solution called log Pearson type 3 distribution. It's just a statistical analysis over a period of time with peak discharges for each year. And the data we got was for the Milesburg station. So we had to subtract some things to get it for specifically in Talleyrand Park. And those things were the wastewater treatment plant, Buffalo Run, and Big Spring itself. And the table on the right shows the discharges. So 312 CFS is a 1 year storm. So that's got an occurrence of happening every year. 2 year storms, 836, so on and so forth. And then 100 year storms at 4,000 CFS.
So one of the goals was to conduct a flood analysis to determine which year design storm would flood the park's peninsula. And hopefully these charts make it a little bit easier to read, but we were able to get these results from running a steady flow analysis on HECRAS using the design discharge Q values that were just discussed in the previous slide. The top figure represents with dam peninsula flooding occurrence and the bottom one represents without the dam. So today, with the dam structure in place in the park, the peninsula tip floods with any storm event bigger than a 1-year storm. And the majority of the peninsula area, so I'm thinking not the tip, but more like the sidewalk and stuff, would flood with anything bigger than a 5 to 10 year storm. And then if the if the dam were to be removed, you now can see that with the peninsula tip will not flood with anything bigger than a 5 to 10 year storm, and the park itself would now be able to stand up to hopefully about a 25-year storm before completely flooding. So from viewing these results, we determined that the removal of the dam will help improve the flooding drastically in Talleyrand.
So the team conducted a velocity analysis using the HECRAS program, which is a free program available from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And the velocity analysis is displayed using the chart, which is shown below. And it's broken up into different sections of the actual stream. So our team is focusing on the peninsula itself, which is the left bank or the left OB. And so we're focusing on the velocity and the shear force of this as shown by our target velocity and target shear stress. So as Taylor stated earlier, our target velocity was 3.51 feet per second for grasses and plants and 6.56 feet per second for live stakes. And as we're looking through the velocity analysis for HECRAS, we can see that for the left embankment, both of those are beneath the target velocity. So, and our target shear stress for the embankment was also 0.84 pounds per square foot for grasses and plants and 2.61 pounds per square foot for live stakes. And also shown is that we are well beneath both of those values.
So then for additional discussion, we wanted to determine how accurate our HECRAS model was by comparing our model to the Talleyrand flood in September of 2018, which was an extreme case. So using actual stream gauge data for the flood in 2018, Aaron was able to estimate a Q value of about 2,800 CFS using the log Pearson distribution he was just talking about. So what you're looking at, the figure on the top left captures that the current dam structure was not able to sustain a storm of that size. One, it was a huge storm, but you can also tell that the water is just kind of directly flowing over rather than like a step down. So the HECRAS 3D model below that photo represents the 2018 flood event as that light blue, and a typical day flow would be that dark green. And here you kind of see again, it's just kind of flowing over and not doing that step down like it would if it were not that intense of a storm. So then the figure on the top right shows Talleyrand Peninsula flooding, but not fully submerged, as we can still see grass and sidewalk. So the HECRAS model below that photo represents the cross section next to the peninsula. So on the left, that's the bank right there. And the light blue water again represents like typical flow. And then the next dark blue line represents a 25-year storm, which you probably don't remember, but on the previous slide, that was about 2,600 CFS. And then the next blue line above that is the 2018 storm, which was 2,800 CFS. So again, it's kind of shown that it would be a little bit bigger than a 25-year storm, which is what we estimated. So these results from the figures confirm that our HECRAS model was designed pretty accurate for at least the scope of the project, and it can accurately model flooding in Talleyrand.
The Bureau asked the team to create an artistic rendering of the actual area, and the model is not exactly to scale. It's roughly about 1/2 of the actual size. And we decided to use the free software called Blender. And Blender is mainly used for animations and modeling, so it was a perfect fit for our project. With the figure shown below, with the dam removed, There's no flooding of the actual banks or the peninsula. And I apologize for the crudeness of the actual image itself. It's hard to display the actual animation of Blender without using a program, and you can't really display the program by itself.
All right, so we also thought that it'd be a good idea to implement a step pool in the area. The idea kind of bounced around between all four of us a bit, but we ran it by Dr. Branica, who works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but is also a professor in the ABE department at Penn State. And we asked him, like, is it even necessary to have these step pools? And essentially he said, back in the day when these dams were built, like hundreds of years ago, they're usually built in a place that already kind of had some type of buildup, maybe some underlying bedrock or something like that. So if the dam were to be removed and there is some type of constriction there, step pools would be necessary to implement to provide stability in the area. So the step pool was designed in case that were to happen if the borough decides to go through with this design. As you can see in the top image, the water flows over these structures from the top to the bottom. And we proposed, on the left, you can see 6 step pools of 500 feet, spreading out the elevation drop of 4.5 feet that the dam provided. And it's really important to note here at the bottom that these structures were designed based off of low flow storms. So basically a 1-year storm or anything even smaller than that, because the purpose of these step pools are to be submerged so that fish can travel through the notches that are in these kind of rock structures. As you can see, the height of these structures are 0.75 feet. So they're super small and supposed to be submerged, but still provide sort of a water feature to the park, because we understand that the dam might be missed, especially because of its water feature. But the step pool still provides that, but also helps the fish out as well. And we also included a real life picture of what these step pools would look like if they were implemented. So this image is from along Spring Creek where the McCoy Dam removal happened. And in this image, you can see 2 pictures of what step pools would look like. Again, as you can see, they're very natural looking, but they still provide a nice kind of water feature, just in case people miss the water feature the dam provided. So another thing that kind of goes along with removing dams is handling the sediment that's built up behind it. So this sediment needs to be removed before the dam is removed, because if you were to let all that sediment travel downstream, it would create really cloudy water that's super bad in terms of water quality, and also might create a fish kill, which is not optimal at all. So we propose to remove and dredge sediment before removing the dam to prevent that from happening. But it's also a requirement of the PA, Department of Environmental Protection, with the permits and all, especially if the material behind the dam is silt. So in order to figure out, how much sediment needs to be removed from behind the dam, we kind of first tried to figure out the average stream slope of the area. And that was done by using digital elevations, just public data we found online, and we estimated an average stream slope from that. We overlaid that stream slope on this image on the top you can see, which is a kind of profile side view of Talleyrand Park, and you might see that dam in orange there, so that's the side view. So we just overlaid the blue stream slope on top of that, and essentially the distance between the existing ground, which is in green, and the blue line, we found the difference between that to figure out how much depth of sediment needs to be removed. You may also see 6 vertical pink lines. Those signify where the cross sections were taken, which are these 3 boxes below here. So that gives you kind of like a different view of the park. So if you put these images together, you kind of get a 3D view in your head. But 2 of the stations, you see there's no excavation at all, and that's because it's downstream of the dam. We don't want to touch that, but we do want to remove sediment behind the dam, which is these 4 pictures right here. And, we just figured out the depth, kind of laid that on this figure, and we used a trapezoid to kind of estimate what the stream should look like after you remove the sediment. So we got a bunch of areas here, but in order to figure out the volume that needs to be excavated, we use something called the end area method to, basically average the distances between these areas to get a volume by multiplication. And then we estimate about 5,183 cubic yards of sediment to be removed. To put that into context, it could be about 323 to 518 dump truck loads, which sounds alarmingly big, but we did kind of expect this just because of, there's over 200 years of sediment behind this dam, so it's going to add up after a while. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the cost estimate a bit later. Another thing that came to our attention when we were discussing this design with Dr. Branica is that if we were to remove the dam, the log sills in the park may become exposed. And the problem with that is the log sills are designed to be submerged in water, and that way they don't rot and they last a lot longer. But we take out the dam and the water levels drop, then these structures could become exposed and it could cause the area to be not as stable. So Dr. Branica gave us this image he came up with called log curving to kind of address that issue that might happen in the park. And we didn't fully investigate this, but this is what he gave us. And we recommend that if the borough were to pursue this route to discuss this option with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to our understanding, I think the log sills were originally put in by them. So definitely work with them if this is necessary.
So this is the Peninsula Restoration with plants. So I got the area for the peninsula where we're going to plant. It's going to be 0.65 acres. And the two plant types is from suggested by Ernst. Seeds are facultative wetland and obligatory wetland plant mixes they have. And those are the plant mixes they suggested for us. And those are 10 pounds per acre. So it comes out to about 6.5 pounds for each. And then 0.06 pounds per acre for a plant called turtlehead, which helps with bees remove mites. And there would be live staking along the edge. So in this next photo is what everything would look like together. The red area would be live staking of plants, and next slide I'll get into what live staking is. The yellow is live staking along the edge and into the bank, because this is the part of the bank that's really eroded. And then the blue is the seeding area where we would plant all the seeds that I just suggested before. The pink would be a bench, and then the green little dot would be the plaque that we mentioned earlier. So live staking is you cut grafts with volunteers from the plants. The plants we're going to use are red twig, dogwood, buttonbush, and silky dogwood, because those plants really like to be in the water, and they're very good at bank stabilization. So what you do is you take your graft 1 to 3 feet, you cut flat on top, and then an angle cut in the bottom, so you know which side's the bottom and top. Then you plant them vertically into the bank, so if they were on the bank itself, it'd be up, like straight up and down. If it's on the bank, it's going to be vertically to the bank. So here's what it would look like. So you would want to plant along those rocks there, and then all the way in about 5 feet out from the bank and into the bank at 90 horizontally almost. And then as you get further down that picture towards more of the top, it kind of levels out, and you just want to keep it 90 degrees as shown in the picture to the left. So here's some of the plants that are going to be seeded. Just a couple of them. There's probably, I think there's like 30 or 40 different species of plants we're going to plant. So on top left, that's swamp milkweed. The middle is blue flag iris, and then the right is boneset. So here's a box and whisker plot showing springtime blooming. So the first plants that would bloom would be a nice yellow color, and then it would even out with white blue, and purple. And then towards the end of spring, early summer, you would start seeing some pinks. Summer, it's pretty even for the most part. Everything starts about the end of spring, beginning of summer, around that end of June, beginning of July. So you get a good variety of colors in the summer months. And then towards the fall, about the same thing, but you'll lose a little bit of greenish yellow. You get about a good section of colors towards the end of fall and starting of winter, and you might keep those plants blooming towards the end of fall, beginning of winter. And then here's a picture of what one of the live staking plants, this is red twig dogwood, would look like in the winter. And using, a nice white background from snow and whatnot, this would look absolutely beautiful for the Peninsula area.
All right, so we also outlined a construction plan associated with this project. So first and foremost, permits definitely need to be obtained, and they were emailed to some of the borough representatives, I think a couple weeks ago. But most importantly, there's one document from the PADEP that would need to be obtained, and it's kind of like a waiver. So essentially, it's the only document you have to follow in terms of permits. And I think it's like 10 things listed you have to do on there, and it costs $50 to do that. And then you'd also want to make sure that all the engineering plans and everything is certified by a professional engineer, and just to ensure it's all going to work out, because I think the permits require that. Phase 2 would be site preparation and the deconstruction. So we propose that the dam, you'd first need to remove some of the sediment, but because the water might build up and it might make it hard for excavators to get in there, you might have to do a pattern of notching the dam and removing sediment, just so that the excavators don't drown and get stuck in the water. We included a picture here of kind of how the construction or deconstruction went for the McCoy Dam. So that would be kind of like a similar thing we would do in this area. And as you can see, we propose hydraulic hammers to be used to deconstruct the dam, and then a bucket just to carry all the material out on the peninsula, being sure to separate the concrete from the dam from the sediment itself. Phase 3 would be site remediation. So that would be all about what Aaron was talking about in terms of live staking on the sides of the peninsula and seeding the peninsula itself. And erosion control blankets would be used in order to protect the peninsula and make sure everything's okay with that. Phase 4 would be long-term maintenance, especially on the peninsula. So first and foremost, the live stakes would need to be trimmed, at least within the first year. And you would not want to mow anything on the first year either, which is why we said this solution would decrease maintenance in the area. Human traffic would create paths to the stream. That way people can still get close to it, even if there will be some flowers and things adding protection. And spring mowing can occur every year as well, but it's important to refer to the Ernst documents. They have an entire maintenance plan of exactly what, how to take care of the plants and stuff in the area. All right, so here's the cost estimate. First and foremost, I want to say that we put this together based off of public data, so true costs may actually vary. We used a reference called RS Means to get some of these prices, but some were just made from cold calling companies, and some were just made using information from various sources found through Google. I guess one of the things I want to turn your attention to is the sediment excavation. Since there is a lot of sediment that has to be removed from the stream, that accounts for a little less than half of the cost, which we expected that to be one of the biggest costs. And also, there is some uncertainty with the log curbing price, so just keep that in mind as well. But we also included prices of the live stakes in here as well, in case there weren't enough volunteers to get all of these graphs. You could always just buy them from Ernst as well, but those costs could be subtracted out if volunteers just chose to do that instead. I also wanted to note that the hauling and disposal of sediment is not included in this cost estimate because there are reuse options for it. So if there were any landfills that needed material to top the landfill, the sediment could be used for that, or if there are any mine reclamation projects in the area, which is completely possible, you could have one of those companies come and pick up the material for free and get it off your hands that way instead of paying for hauling and disposal costs. All right, but that price I forgot to mention, but it was about $280,000, which may sound like a lot, but luckily there are a bunch of funding sources that would help to decrease these costs to the borough. As we said, PA Fish and Boat Commission said if you remove the dam, which is a permanent solution, your odds of getting funding increases compared to just simply notching the dam, which would only be a temporary fix. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife National Fish Passage Program could provide up to $70,000 in funds. And also notable, PADCNR, Community Parks and Recreation grants, could also provide $50,000 to $70,000 in grant funding. But there are also a bunch of other government agencies in Pennsylvania and also federal agencies that you could apply for grants to help get this project off the ground. So there's a bunch of things to investigate in terms of that. All right, so now we're going to review, did our design meet specifications? So in the beginning, you heard Taylor talk about all these goals he wanted to meet, and now we're going to see if our design actually meets them. So in terms of the water temperature, dissolved oxygen, and iron, we used the Milesburg gauge downstream of Talleyrand Park to investigate this. We didn't have any probes in Talleyrand Park itself, but that's the best information we could get. And we analyzed this daily data, and it all fell within the limits of range, so there are no concerns there. And adding the live stake to the park would definitely decrease water temperatures by providing shade in the area. Next, you can see we investigated the water velocity at the notch and the Froude number at the notch as well, and the height of the drop. Those all pertain to those step pools, and our goal is to have water velocities at the notch less than 4.91 feet per second. That is to promote fish passage, and our design met that. We had a goal to have a Froude number of less than 1. Basically, that means that there will be no hydraulic jumps in the area because our design had a number less than that. And that's really good because if there was a hydraulic jump, that would essentially make it dangerous for fish and kayakers to pass. So we can ensure that the design's safe in that respect. Again, the height of the drop of those structures are 0.75 feet, less than 4, which is one of our goals. We also estimated the overland erosion on the peninsula, not the banks, on the peninsula, to be 48.91 megagrams per hectare per year, which is a decrease from the previous 192.78 value. And we simply got those values from using the universal soil loss equation as an estimate there. Next, as Tyler said, we investigated the shear stress on the bank and the velocity on the stream bank. We did this just to ensure that if we introduced natural material, could it withstand the pressure and the velocities of the water in Spring Creek? The answer is yes. As Tyler previously said, we had 0.12 as a value for the shear stress pounds per square foot, and then velocity is about 1.28 feet per second, all with, lower than the limits of our specifications, which is great. It means the natural solutions will be able to withstand the stream. We also wanted to contain a 25-year storm within Spring Creek, and our design does do that. That means that the 2018 flood that Taylor showed us would not have been as severe if the dam was removed and sediment was dredged out of the area. Again, we had a goal of using 100% natural material, which was met by using native plants, limestone, or woods if the log curbing was necessary. Aaron shared that we would propose native plants to be introduced on the peninsula, which would be about 37 native plant species, which definitely increases the biodiversity in the area. We proposed for the lifespan of the solution to be about 25 years, and since the Spring Creek can hold a 25-year storm, that is met. The only thing that wasn't met was the cost. We had a maximum allowable budget of $200,000, but it was actually estimated to be about $272,000. So it is a little high, but luckily there are funding sources to decrease those costs.
All right. The team had and still has a great relationship with the Bureau. We regularly communicated with emails and Zoom meetings. Also, with the Bureau's help, we were able to conduct some expert meetings via Zoom. At the meetings were with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, Dr. Branica, Kurt Smithgold, Dr. Fetter, and Brian Knoll. We also had the Bureau gave us dam dimensions. They provided the notched idea and helped us make contact with experts. And they also helped us to communicate our results better. And some conclusions. Our team focused on dam removal, dredging, live staking, and seeding of the area. All of these are feasible options to meet the customer needs. However, they can be expensive, as Jamie has stated earlier. And also, as Jamie has stated, it may require log curving. We recommend for future teams that more survey points be collected for the area in order to improve the accuracy of the headgrass model. We also recommend that future teams investigate the attachment from to the dam to Water Street, like how the dam is connected to that area and if it can be safely removed without damaging that wall. We recommend that the Bureau investigates reuse options of the sediment, as Jamie stated earlier. And we believe that community approval would make this project even more successful. And with that, we'd like to stop the presentation and open the floor to any questions, if there are any.
This is Randy Brockwell. I guess I'll jump in since people are probably waiting for that first question. When you talk about the dredging prior to removal, let's say once the project's done, how often would you have to come back and do that again? If you have a buildup over 200 years that you're working on now, are we looking at every 25 years as a date, or a year was talked about earlier, or is it longer than that?
So if the dam was removed, the dredging is and should be a one-time thing, just because all that fine silt would naturally move in a stream if there was no dam. So that would be definitely a one-time thing. And once the stream, if it were to be restored to like its natural water elevations, again, it would pass silt like that naturally. Streams are supposed to do that, and the bigger stuff would settle, and it wouldn't be that much. But again, it would restore how a stream's supposed to function. So it would be just a once and done type of thing.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat. It says, is there a difference in safety of the notch solution or the channels with brushes? Also, what about the impact of our drinking water while under construction?
I guess I can jump in on this one, and anyone else can jump in as well from the student team. But we definitely saw concerns, like safety concerns with the notch solution, just because there would still be a hydraulic jump, and those things are pretty dangerous because it could cause kayakers, to flip and then get stuck, and it could cause a loss of life as well. So we just didn't want to investigate that solution because we thought that removing the dam would be the safest option for all. So if that answers that question, and also about the impact of drinking water while under construction, that is a really great question. And hopefully, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the drinking water plant, I know it's along Big Spring, is it upstream of the dam?
It comes out of the big spring, which is, feeds into Spring Creek. This project, if it came to fruition, would have no impact on our drinking water. Our drinking water is groundwater, not contaminated by surface water, which is this water. Our spring water flows into this, so there's absolutely no way this project would affect our drinking water.
Since we can't see everybody on our screen, if there is somebody else that has a question, just shout it out, please.
Hi, Debbie Clayton. I'm on council. I have a question about your proposed plantings for the peninsula. Were you looking to augment what's there? It sounds as if you're trying to get rid of all of the grass.
Yes,
Yeah.
because with the grass there, as soon as Spring Creek floods, for how often from our model it floods, it's just going to flow right over and just start like from this picture, it's going to start bashing along that road too if it starts flooding like that. Having those plants there will slow the flooding down, and then with just Big Spring slowly flowing, it'll reduce erosion on the other side as well as reducing erosion in the peninsula. Because from that one picture, those rocks were put in 2014, and there was already about 1 foot of that bank gone. So about 6 years, and you lose a foot, and like soon you'll probably lose the bridge. In another, like, I don't know, 20 years, the bridge will be like underwater almost because of the erosion. And those plants will at least slow that down for the time being. And hopefully, go ahead.
May I make a suggestion? Right now, it's a monoculture, basically. It's just grass. The plantings would improve diversity, be a nice area for pollinators, and reduce flooding, reduce the maintenance, and well, the flooding and the erosion, once the dam is removed, would be less of an issue anyway. So, but anyway, that's my input.
Yeah, and like Mr. Predatorgast was saying, like he said, there's going to be a lot of pollinators here, and they suggested adding turtlehead, which will help the bee population out in this area. It'll stop because the nectar from that stops bees from getting mites, and it'll look really nice. And in the winter with the red twig dogwood, it'll along the bank with a nice snow on the banks. It'll look really nice with those like deep red colors in the wintertime. So even in wintertime, it'll look really nice too.
More questions?
Just a quick question. With the lowered water level, how might this affect the mill race?
So with the lower water level, we'll have to look at the model, but my guess is if you remove the dam, there probably won't be water going through the mill race, but
Or minimal. There'll be minimal water going to the mill race.
And that was the purpose the dam was built for, to get the water level up so that water went down the mill race.
Be a good solution for your sludge or your sediment.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about that too, with the sediment part. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, you do have an accumulation of sediment at the mill race entrance right now, as Aaron knows from doing his measurements. So if one wanted to keep the mill race as a water feature, you could always seal off the end of the mill race and basically pump some water into mill race to have that water feature. That would be then separate. That would be a completely separate water feature that's not dependent on the water level within the stream.
That would give you a nice stagnant pool.
Yeah, if that was desirable. So. Do we have any other questions?
We have 5 more minutes.
If not, I'm, okay. You want to hold off for a little bit?
Go ahead, John, say what you're gonna say.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy with the work that our students did on this project. And I'm also very happy that knowing that this would be the most challenging to present to a community, they still looked at the options and chose to take the option that provided the most technical and environmental complete set of solutions. And I want to compliment you guys on doing a very nice job. And I also want to compliment you on jumping in and taking on the Army Corps of Engineer software, doing the analysis, coming out and doing the measurements last fall in the muck and everything. And that I was very impressed that you had the courage to go for the solution that probably was going to have the most resistance. And for young people to demonstrate that courage is the reason that we have universities, and you made us all very proud, any of us that's connected with Penn State, by what you've done.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
guys did a great job.
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
It was really pleasurable to meet with you and talk with you. And from someone, John and I attended many of the meetings. He was the technical expert on the borough, and I'm the truly naive person who knows nothing about engineering. And you were able to talk to both ends of the spectrum and get it to the point that we both could understand where you all were coming from. And for that, I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joanne.
You're welcome.
Now the big question is, did we change your mind, Joanne?
I'm willing to consider this. When we started this last fall, I was in the no way, no how, no where.
Joanne,
So-
you use different words than that.
No, I think your solution is the best one of the group.
So basically, the plan is that the university is going to provide us another group of students next year for a second solution, and then a year after that for a third one. Then after we have all of these, we can look at them, have the community have some input, and then we'll decide what to do.
Unless any of these guys want to come back and go to grad school and work on this project again next year.
I think it works that way, John, but not good thought.
Uh,
All right, go.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
and doing this presentation. I think it was well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
you.
guys. So we got
Nothing. We're done.
5 minutes.
Yeah. I have 3 minutes before we can get started.
Oh, okay.
So y'all need to go take a quick break. Please do so.
Hopefully it's going to be a shorter meeting than the last one. Evening, Harry.
Mike, how you doing?
Yeah, boo.
See, that grass got cut, Harry.
Yes, I didn't include you, but I noticed that yesterday, and
That's right. I read everything. Yeah.
Tom's on top of it.
I got the report from neighbors, and I got the full meal deal. I even got an in-house inspection. It's not good.
Wow, lucky you.
I didn't go in, but someone did.
I could probably tell you that from looking at the outside from knocking on the door.
Yeah, well, we've tried to get services for him, but he just won't accept anything.
Sounds like he's adamantly against it, actually.
Yeah, just an unsafe situation.
Harry, did you get a chance to go out to Reynolds Avenue today?
I did. I was a little perplexed by the addresses you gave me. They don't exist.
It's Bellefonte, come on.
But I mean, there was an address that fit nicely between those two numbers, but I didn't see anything at that property. But it was raining. I didn't get out.
Oh, I know where it is.
I'm assuming they must be talking about something in the back.
Yeah, it is. If you go, well, you know where Jake Corman's office is located?
Yeah.
If you go there and look at the stream, you'll see I think I know what is being talked about. I went and looked at it not too long ago.
Guys, it's 7:30.
Oh, we're getting more work done now.
Yeah, we're going to get work so we don't have to be here till 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah,
How's
that's
that?
up to you. That's all in your hands, girl. All right, let's go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The May 3rd Bellefonte Borough Council meeting is called to order. Prior to this meeting, we had an executive session dealing with real estate and then a work session where we had a great presentation by the Penn State Sustainability Project on the Spring Creek Dam at Talleyrand Park. I'd like to do a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and
republic,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Prendergast,
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey,
I'm here.
Ms. Walker is excused. Mr. Brackbill,
Here.
Ms. Cleaton,
Here,
Ms. Homboski,
Present.
Ms. Abbott,
Here.
Mr. Eaton,
John?
now he's here. Where is he?
Yeah, he's there. He's just muted.
Well, that's
Are
debatable.
Here, sorry about that. I forgot I
Problem.
muted myself.
Mayor Wilson,
present.
that's everybody. Thank you.
Great. As noted, all votes taken will be recorded as unanimous when there's no audible opposition. We have a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Prendergast
I'll second it.
and Clayton.
Debbie?
Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Doesn't look like there's anything on the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, then we'll move on to the regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is oral comments. They'll be limited to 3 minutes, and Matt Hill, you're on first. But I don't see him.
I think Matt's on somewhere. He was.
Here,
He's there.
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I represent the Bellefonte Lodge number 268 free and accepted Masons. And we have an agreement between the borough and the Masons that occurred years ago to rent the back portion of our lot. At the time that we went into this agreement, we weren't really using that lot during the day because all of our meetings were after 5. Recently, Bellefonte Borough has changed their parking time to 8 o'clock, which now does infringe on our meetings, and our members no longer have free parking because our meetings start at 7 o'clock. So we are asking for your cooperation, and for your consideration, we have 2 options. The first option is to provide the Masons with a complimentary parking pass that they can put in their windshields. It's actually small, not huge like that, but that's what it says. It is only for our meetings. It is only in the vicinity of the lodge building. And it is only for our members and guests. The second option is to change the parking back to 5 o'clock in the lot behind our building so that we can hold our meetings without penalty for parking. So these are the 2 options we have for your consideration. Currently, we do have a lease with the borough to lease that parking area. Again, it originally did not harm us in any way because our meetings were in the evening, and that's the only time we really use the parking. So we're asking for your consideration and to make a compromise with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Do we need to make a motion, or is this coming later in the thing, or we sending it to streets?
That would be a building and property issue, not streets.
Property, okay.
Yep. Matt, do you have a problem with meeting with building and property to discuss the parameters of helping resolve this issue?
Option 1.
I agree.
There, it's over.
Yeah, we're not the committee, Tom.
I know, but this is simple. Get her done. Option 1.
Yeah, I would make the motion to go ahead and approve option 1 by providing the passes.
I think
And we
that's
have
right.
Bill.
I'd second that.
Brett, Bill, and Prendergast. Discussion?
I have a question. How many permits are you looking for, Matthew?
We're only looking for about 30 to 40 passes. We have over 300 members, but we don't have a lot of active members. Our active members, and that would include guests from other lodges that come to visit, I would say only 30 to 40 passes would be necessary.
And you meet once a month or twice a month?
We meet every Monday night. Matter of fact, there's a meeting going on right now that I'm gonna scurry off to. We meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock. Our main meeting is the 3rd Tuesday of every month is our stated meeting. And there are 2 appendant bodies of Masons that meet on one day, a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So we're not asking for every day. We're just asking for a couple nights during the month.
And you want those, I'm just trying to be clear, so when we vote on the motion, everybody is clear. You want those permits valid from 6:30 p.m. until 7 p.m. or until 8 p.m. Is that
yes,
reasonable?
30 till 8. I mean, our meetings generally run till 9:30, but of course they're only I think they're only ticketing out there till 8 o'clock. So
That's correct. Yes. So do you think?
yeah, for an hour and a half.
Yeah. So 6:30 p.m. would be the time that you would want the free parking to start for those meetings. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Very few of us show up at 6:30. Most show up at 7.
Okay.
I'm the early bird because I'm the so-called president of the organization.
Okay. So if our enforcement folks stumble into the lot at 6 p.m. and there's a placard on the dashboard, you need to warn your members that that's not appropriate. So
Yeah.
our meter enforcement folks will be directed to ticket cars before 6:30 p.m. on those meeting nights. Is that correct?
That is correct. Or if they're down there on South Allegheny, or if they're on High Street, or if they're on Spring Street, that's not around. This says in the vicinity of the lodge. That is all.
Okay.
Mike?
Thank you, Matt.
I live a half a block from the lot, and on those nights, they wouldn't have any problem. They're not taking spots away from anybody.
That was my question is, and Don and Ralph might know the better answer to this. I know we have people with permits. I assume those people with the permits use them during the day. Are any of those permits for residents in the evening? And if so, how might this conflict with this request?
Well, that's a good question. Usually the permit holder parks at night because they go to work during the day, typically. And you know, we have in the county's going to ask for more parking spaces. We could do it as a trial basis to see if there's any overlap or any congestion in the parking lots. That's what I would suggest. Try it as a trial basis and see how it works.
That was why I was suggesting go to building a property so we could get this kind of information together to know exactly, do we have 30 additional spots at the time with what we already know is going on?
There's usually hardly anybody in that lot at night.
Okay.
I think Ralph has a good point.
Hardly anybody.
Like we did with others, let's give it a try. If adjustments need to be made, we'll contact Mr. Hill. But I'm ready for a vote.
Call the motion.
Yes, John.
Do we have any other entity in the borough that can make the same request for any of our other parking lots?
We are not renting from any other.
We're renting from the bank, and they have some reserved spaces, but that was in the lease. This is not in the lease.
Yeah, but is it 30 spaces was in the leased area?
No, I couldn't tell you that right offhand, John.
It really.
Their back of their property runs back to the alley. You know,
Right.
to give you an idea, it's the width of the building that fronts Allegheny Street.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying that if we give a pass to one organization, then does that establish a precedent for other organizations to make the same request?
Because we have a lease arrangement or agreement, I think that makes it a little bit different. So
Yes.
I would suggest or think that the only other entity that might come in would be the bank on the corner there, First National.
Good Lord. So we'd have no other parking lot in town that would have this, that someone can make this request.
We own the other parking lots in their entirety, the two
Okay.
other main lots.
Okay.
Call the motion, please.
Do we have any opposition to calling the question? Seeing none, I think Should we do this by roll call?
We can.
Okay,
All right, I'll start. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Prendergast,
Yes.
Ms. Vasey,
yes,
Mr. Brackville,
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton,
Yes.
Ms. Ombowski. Said yes. Okay, thanks. Ms. Abbott,
Yes.
Mr. Eaton,
Yeah,
yeses have it.
okay, thank you. So we'll do this on a trial basis, and if there's a problem, we'll let you know and come back and do some further review.
Thank you very much. And you will not have a problem from us.
I expect none.
The second oral comments are from Bruce Cifelli.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And hello, my name is Bruce Cifelli. I'm a resident homeowner in Bellefonte, and I operate a permitted Airbnb on East Curtin Street. If you had time to read my letter I submitted to the borough manager last week, I'm certain you felt my frustration and anxiety over possibly having to leave my home I love. I considered it a plea to you in helping me stay in my home, but tonight I present another plea that I may assist the borough of Bellefonte in growing a healthy relationship of Airbnb owners within the local community. I realize Airbnb is a fairly new concept, but it is the future of lodging and here to stay. If not in Bellefonte, then in neighboring towns. We have so much to offer right here. Why not keep the additional tax revenue and much needed commerce right here in the borough? We all recognize the role of quaint bed and breakfast facilities in our community, filling the needs of some true romantics while beautifying our residential neighborhoods. Unfortunately, they cannot meet the needs of all, and that's where Airbnb homes fill the void. Our guests enjoy the at-home experience with the ability to gather, relax, cook meals, whatever their pleasure, within a private, intimate setting of a single home. While our temporary tenants may not prefer other lodging within the borough, they certainly patronize many of our stores and restaurants throughout the borough. Before moving forward with any ordinance of this type, I ask that the committee investigate the economic impact, including the impact to homeowners like me who will not be able to stay if they cannot Airbnb. If Airbnbs are not permitted to continue, our guests will locate housing outside the borough and potential commerce will most certainly be lost. I would love to meet with borough leaders to invite them in our endeavor to bring visitors to Bellefonte while growing the responsible Airbnb model. Many of our Airbnb owners have worked very hard to run a legitimate, permitted, and safe business with the welfare of both our guests and neighbors in mind. While most of our Airbnb owners I have been able to reach are compliant, the few that are not would like the opportunity to come in compliance with current codes for all rental units within the residential zones. I humbly ask that you give us an opportunity to share our experiences. To date, we have only heard the horror stories, but I look forward to the day where borough leadership reaches out, affording us the opportunity to open their eyes to our success stories and clear up any misconceptions. With each guest, we continue to evolve, and of course there are learning experiences. These are the most important to share with new Airbnb owners, and utilizing the community of practice theory, we can help them avoid missteps and provide solutions in everyone's best interest. Again, I offer my assistance as a liaison in working through community concerns while assisting new Airbnb owners to reach compliance and work toward building a business that is safe and respectful of the community in which we live. There are many communities that have successful bed and breakfasts as well as Airbnbs, and Bellefonte can too. The large B&Bs typically serve a different clientele, and the demand for lodging and appeal of Bellefonte makes an opportunity for all to coexist. I look forward to working with you and am confident we can reach a solution that benefits all without creating hardship for our Airbnb owners, neighbors, and the business community. Thank you for considering our position, and once again, I look forward to working with you to find a solution for all within our borough and community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cifelli. This is further down on the agenda, and so I think what we'll do is hold off the discussion on that until we get down there, and then we can have the discussion and consider your proposal. How's that? Are there any other?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other oral comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to written communications.
Well, the first item is Mr. Cifelli's letter, and hopefully you've had a chance to read over it. Mr. Cifelli did bring up a number of good points. It's there for your consideration. As our council president said, we'll discuss this a little bit later on in the agenda. There's also another letter regarding short-term rentals, some of the problems that have been experienced in the community. So that's there for your review as well. The next item involves public safety around the diamond, pedestrian safety. Mr. Gettig made some recommendations for council to consider. I know the streets committee and council is working on this issue, but his recommendations are there for you to review. The next item is related to high grass at a property at East Bishop Street. There was a little bit of informal discussion before the work session started. The property in question, the grass has been cut over the weekend. I'll just be honest with everybody. It's occupied by an older resident who has been difficult to cooperate with and get assistance, even though assistance has been offered. But the good news is the grass has just been cut. I don't know if anyone has any questions or you want to move on.
Ralph, I have a question on that. I know this came up last year.
Yes.
As a nuisance, and I thought at that point it was clarified what was happening, but apparently we're right back in. So I'm just looking at how can we make this a more positive response to that resident, and how do we continue to have the grass mowed? I don't know if we can depend on neighbors or who's been. We know the neighbors have been mowing it for them, and if they're okay to do that, then I'm okay as well. But I would just like to see this not raise its head every year.
I'm sorry, Randy. I'm not sure how to answer that.
I know.
It's an older resident who resists help, free help, you name it, volunteer help, and always says he has good intentions to cut the grass, but he never does cut the grass. So,
as I understand that he's not the owner of the property; it's his sister. Couldn't we work through her?
Harry can speak to that. I believe both he and his sister are on the property deed, but Harry, do you want to comment?
No, you're exactly right. It's both he and his sister, but his sister lives in Florida.
Okay. But
I have spoken to her too. And she's aware of the issue. She's aware of the issue from the past. I can't really speak, and maybe Tom can add to this. She had indicated that she was going to look for some help to possibly assist in mowing it. I did speak with the property owner himself, who told me he was going to cut it, but then I found out the neighbor cut it. So I don't know if his sister facilitated that or if just the neighbor stepped in on his own. I'm not really sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add real quick, we have a procedure called out in the ordinance, unless council would like to review that. Harry, our code administrator, follows the procedure laid out in the ordinance that was approved by the council. So and there's a notice period, there's a time of action, then if there's no action, Harry or whoever the code person is takes the person to the district justice office, and then we wait. We wait for a hearing to be scheduled. A person may not show or whatever. Meanwhile, the grass is growing. And I believe this is what happened in years past. There's a lot of time lost going through that procedure, which is a legal procedure that we are bound to go through.
Yes, Doug.
So after so many violations, Ralph, when do we start taking a more drastic action? Do we have to go through this process each time?
No, no, I don't believe so. He can be fined once we go through that process. I'd have to double check the wording of the ordinance, but once he's given notice, he can be fined each day he's in violation. I think once we go through that first process, I believe we're good for the season. Now, Harry, do you have any input on that?
You're correct about that aspect of it, but you're also correct that if the grace period expires and it's not in compliance, then we have to fill out forms, file it with the magistrate. A date is set, and that's going to be a week or two after it's filed. Then he could ask for a continuance. So I mean, this could boil down to weeks and maybe months. But typically, just to clarify something that you said earlier, typically how I approach this is that rather than go directly to the magistrate immediately, I fine them. I send them a fine. And then, so that demonstrates to them that we mean business about this. And if they don't pay the fine, then I have the option of additional fines, and then I have the option of going to the magistrate. The fine is $50 the first time. It's $100 for each subsequent violation, and it can be on a daily basis.
Well, I know the neighbors have put up with this for years, and they've all volunteered along with borough staff and council members to help this gentleman out, and he refuses to help. I think the neighbors have tolerated this long enough. So as a council person, I want to see the swiftest and the most painful penalties for this. It's time that we act on this. This is not fair to the neighbors in that neighborhood or the rest of the borough. That's my thought on it.
Doug, just to respond to that, in my conversation I had with his sister, and she was understanding, she knew the problem from the past, she was very apologetic, but I made it very clear to her that the borough's patience has run out, and that we will be pursuing this on a much more aggressive basis than it had been in the past.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this?
Mayor, are you speaking?
Harry, are you sending the notice to the sister now?
No, I don't have an address for a sister.
Well, when you talk with her, get her address, because the notices are being sent to him and she's not getting them. And he's not going to pay them, and the grass is going to grow and we're still going to have the problem. So that's the dilemma we're in.
So realizing that it had been cut over the weekend, I was going to call her to discuss it further with her to find out whether she facilitated that or not. But in that process, I'll make sure that I get her address and include her.
She did not facilitate that. The next door neighbor, who knew nothing about this, after mowing his lawn, went over and mowed the person in question's lawn. And he wondered why everybody was watching him and why nobody helped. And then he was filled in on the history of this, and he went, oh, I get it now. But anyhow, those fines need to be sent to the sister in Florida, because the resident is not going to react to those fines.
Oh, and I understand that. Yep.
All right, thanks.
Anything else? Seeing none, Ralph, keep going.
All right. Now, the next one's actually not good news. The Bellefonte Arts and Crafts Fair Committee has decided to cancel the August Arts and Crafts Fair, which is a big annual event for our community, just because of the COVID restrictions, and trying to put on that size of an event they felt was impractical. Although are planning for 2022, so that's good news. The next item is Downtown Bellefonte Incorporated would like to do a Chalk the Walk event, July 30th and 31st. They're requesting, that's their request, and I believe it's just along West I Street, possibly maybe even on Allegheny. They're doing this in conjunction with the Art Museum.
I'll make a motion to approve that request.
I'll second it.
Just a recommendation, since we got the, that was Prendergast, Brackville and Prendergast?
Prendergast.
Okay. What I'd like to do is make this a conditional approval with them to go through the COVID review with streets, just like we have done with all the others in the last couple of weeks. And if the street says, okay, then it's a go.
I agree, but I think in their request that was covered, but I'm agreeable.
I mean, if you want to throw in a still, it may change the conditional agreement with Bellefonte that we can, if we need to change it, we could.
Okay.
Like the other parts. That
Yeah,
we do.
I think we need to be consistent with everyone. So if we make the motion that it's conditionally approved the date, they go through streets, and if the street says it's okay, then it's a go.
Good.
All right, next item is.
Wait a minute, we haven't had a vote yet.
Sorry. There was a pause there, so I jumped on it.
Everybody in favor of the conditional approval of the date with final approval by the streets committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. Oh, now you can go, Al.
All right, thank you. I was looking up CCR, so it's community something resources, mental health awareness group is intending to set up a pop-up table for awareness and information. I believe they even have some counselors present. They want to do this in Talleyrand Park on May 15th, 1 to 4 p.m. So they're just setting up a table for awareness and information.
So we would need a motion for conditional approval with a meeting with Parks and Rec before the 15th.
I'll make it.
Prendergast?
That motion.
And who's going to second it?
I'll second it.
Eaton? Discussion?
Did you
Are
say
they a nonprofit, a local nonprofit?
I didn't catch that if they were local?
Are they a local nonprofit?
Are they a nonprofit housed here in Bellefonte? If there's somebody on here that can answer that, that would be helpful.
I guess they got to find our.
That's part of what Parks and Rec will have to find out.
Okay.
Then.
Yeah, that was just clarifying. This does go to Park and Rec.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, next item. Bellefonte Sunrise.
Thought we needed to vote.
Did you just, okay, we'll wait for that. Then.
Okay. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Next item, Bellefonte Sunrise Rotary. Instead of doing the traditional children's fair, they are planning to do a drive-through event where they hand out goodie bags. This will be the same Saturday, which is Saturday, June 5th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. or until supplies run out. They're asking to block parking spaces off of West High Street in front of Talleyrand Park on that south side of High Street.
This was discussed at the Parks and Rec meeting last week. So Melissa, can you tell what happened and we can have a motion?
Go ahead.
We need to have a motion because this event was, I guess their initial request was approved. Basically what they're doing, as outlined in the letter, they decided to be as safe as possible in the community, that they will just have a drive up tent like they did for Halloween. If you can remember back to Halloween 2020, they did the exact same thing. They'll just have cars drive up, grab a goodie bag, and then drive off. The volunteers will be masked. They will have fire police there to ensure safety of people lining up. And the police will also be in the area to make sure everything's okay.
I think they also said they would have no more than 200 goodie bags. So when when they are done completing the 200 bags, whenever that is, that's when it's over. Or 2 o'clock, whatever occurs first.
So Melissa, I think we mentioned that this was going to happen. Did we have a motion, the last one saying that the condition approved?
I thought, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go
no,
ahead.
go on. All of the events that we spoke about in our last parks meeting were all approved by council with the final okay by our committee.
Yes,
Okay, so
I
this one,
don't know.
yes.
so this one has been already been approved. This is just a feedback to say that it's okay to go ahead. So no motion is needed.
Good. Next item, the Pinewood Derby that's been talked about being held in Governor's Park, May 23rd. They're just writing back to look for a waiver. The applications in a Bellefonte name instead of the Juniata Valley, whatever, Boy Scout group. But again, just the request is a waiver of the rental pavilion fee, pavilion number 12 out in Governor's Park.
Do we have a motion to waive the fees?
I will gladly make that motion.
Prendergast?
I'll second it. Clayton?
Yes, Clayton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So moved. There is one additional thing with this. I talked to Don this afternoon. The approval we gave was for the date. They were told to come to Parks and Rec for a final review, just like everybody else has. They haven't shown up yet. So they still need to come before they get that final approval.
We're going on the same approval. They have to go. We're
Go to Parks and
conditioning
Rec.
it till they go
Yeah.
to Parks and Rec.
Correct. And that's what the one motion we had earlier. They just haven't shown up yet.
Okay. Okay, the next item that I have listed is the Boroughs Association. It's going to have a virtual conference in June 7th and 8th. It's free because it's virtual. So if you're interested, most of the sessions are during the day. If you want us to help you get registered, we're more than happy to do that. Just let us know. I believe that's all the written communications I have.
Anybody else have any written they want to present? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Mayor Wilson's.
All right, thank you very much. As you noticed, Chief is not here at the meeting tonight. He sent me an email, and I think he sent it to Ralph and Don as well. They've been very busy, and he's working a shift tonight, but he said if we had any pressing questions, I could give him a call and he could get into us or give us an answer. So with that, I have a proclamation. It's the EMS Week proclamation as to designate the week of May 16th to the 22nd, 2021 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. Whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill the gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of emergency medical responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, pre-hospital registered nurses, pre-hospital physicians, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, trained members of the public, and others of hospital medical care providers. Whereas the members of the emergency medical services teams, whether care or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continue education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas the emergency medical services providers within the borough of Bellefonte has their brothers and sisters throughout the nation demonstrated exemplary dedication, missions and concern for overall public health and safety in preparing for the responding to the potential pandemic-related incidences related to COVID-19 virus. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize and value the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating this week. Therefore, I, Thomas Wilson, Mayor of the Borough of Bellefonte, Center County, Pennsylvania, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th to the 22nd, 2021 as Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme EMS Strong, Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And
Good
I think
idea.
that's all I have. If anybody has any questions regarding the police department, I'm ready to take them.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So moving on to my report. I have 2 items this evening. At the last meeting, I indicated that I had attended a Drive Electric PA Coalition meeting on April 15th but didn't have the handouts. I have now received them. In your packet this evening, I put in 3 of the 7 handouts for you to review. 2 of them were scorecards to show where Pennsylvania is in terms of implementing programs to make it easier and more cost effective for the public. We're about 17 in the country right now. One's 15, one's 17, so it's kind of in that area of our state. There was one other handout. It was called the PA ED Roadmap, and I think it had some very good information that I'd like to just put on the screen to share with the public. You see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I didn't pull out the whole roadmap brochure, but I did pull up things I thought the public might be interested in seeing. So it's put together by the Department of Environmental Protection, and the roadmap was originally done in 2018 and 2019, and this is the first update since that happened. So, make this a little smaller. So this shows that since 2011, the number of plug-in electric vehicles and battery electric vehicles have greatly increased. And in fact, the majority of them that have been sold since 2017 have been full battery electrics. And this gives you an idea of where they are throughout the state. So the biggest ones are in the Philadelphia area, in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, the Dauphin County, Harrisburg area, and then us here in Center County. One of the big issues is cost of prices, and they did some research and found that actually the prices are starting to go down while the range of the vehicles are going up. And this gives you an idea of vehicles that are currently available for sale here in Pennsylvania in 2021. As you can see, the plug-in hybrids are cheaper than the battery electric. The difference is that you get a much greater range with the electric vehicles.
May I make a comment on that?
Sure.
That is not a comprehensive list.
No, it is not. There's over 100 different vehicles. This was just a sample they pulled.
Even in Pennsylvania, but I know
Yes.
there are some that are harder to get than others.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. So most people charge their vehicles at home, but in order for people to travel, they need charging stations in public locations along the turnpikes, interstates, and in their workplace. And so they provided information that as of the end of 2020, there were a total of 1,469 public plugs and 451 plugs accessible to the public throughout the state. And the difference between a level 2 and a DC fast charging is the level 2 are the ones like what we have here in town, which will do about 18 to 25 miles per hour of charge, 18 to 25 miles of additional charge per hour versus the DC fast charging, which can do, like for example, with my car, I can get a full 270 miles in 90 minutes. And then they talked about the benefits for businesses, which they can provide by providing employees with access to charging equipment. It may improve employee hiring and retention going down the road. Their vehicles that businesses purchase cost less to operate and maintain the gas vehicles, even though the initial cost is higher. And if you have a commercial business, you can attract more customers to a business. For local governments, a similar sort of benefits. You can install charging equipment for residents and visitors in key locations such as municipal buildings, parking garages, and parks. We've done them in our parking lots, and we could theoretically down the road maybe put some out in Governor's Park. They also, that when you're looking at purchasing vehicles, it's better to look at the full cost of ownership, which includes the maintenance over time. And the program that we're doing here at the borough with the energy audit with Wilson Engineering is showing that this will be a benefit for us in the long term. But just like anything else, you don't just automatically go and buy a new vehicle. You do it when you need to switch out the older vehicles. And then for consumers, there are lots of rebate programs. When you're considering, look where the charging is, where you're traveling, and consider the full lifetime cost of the ownership, not just the sticker price. The maintenance is so much lower that it makes a lot of sense to take all of these factors into account when you're considering purchasing the next vehicle. In addition to that, the state provides rebates for individuals to help them pay for the increased initial cost of a new electric vehicle. And that's it. So I thought I'd just go through that quickly just for your information. Any questions on that?
Those are the same handouts that were in my.
Right.
Okay, so I don't have to redo those.
Actually, it was 15 pages. I just pulled a couple of pages out of it because I didn't want to spend all evening going through every page of that handout. In addition, the Environment and Sustainability Committee got the other handouts from that meeting so that we can discuss them later when we look at the energy audit. The other thing I want to talk about was a conference that I went to last week that I didn't think had anything to deal with the borough until I actually got into it. And it was the Pennsylvania Human Relations Conference on School to Prisons. I attended the 2-day virtual conference put together by the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Some of the topics discussed included effective classroom de-escalation techniques and disciplinary equity in education, which our school resource officers often deal with. The keynote speech was titled Dismantling the School to Prison Pipeline. The presentation was given by Kevin Bethel. He's the Chief of School Safety for the Philadelphia School District, and he's a former Deputy Police Commissioner with the Philadelphia Police Department. He now speaks nationally on how Philadelphia reduced its 1,600 plus juvenile school arrests each year in 2013 to about 50 or 60 arrests in 2019. They're using a diversionary program for low-level or summary offenses that brings together schools, police, nonprofit youth groups, and county human services programs. It includes mentoring and community service programs. We had a safety committee, a discussion similar to this for our borough to look for community service programs. And we're looking into, one discussion we had was that it would be a good idea to look into working with some of the nonprofits and here in town to see what we can do to help reduce, as Chief Weaver said, with summary offenses. At this conference, I asked if we could get a more in-depth presentation. No, I asked if we could have a copy of his presentation from the PHRC. Mr. Bethel said that he actually has a more in-depth presentation that he's designed for municipal governance and he's willing to share for us. I'm currently waiting to hear back from PHRC to set this up with the chief of police and with the safety committee to see where we can go from there. They may have more ideas than what we had in our meeting. Any questions? Okay, that's the end of my report. Moving on. Building and properties, Ann's not here this evening, and I believe Randy has agreed to take on the report.
Yeah, I found out short notice earlier this afternoon, so I didn't have a chance to get a cat that can walk across my screen yet. So I have to deal without that. On the building property report, we met with Phil Breidenball last week to discuss 2 DBI Friday in the Font programs being planned for June 25th and July 30th. We're recommending both programs be recommended to council for conditional approval. And Phil, if I misstate something, please jump in there. I see your names on the screen, so feel free to jump in. I will make a motion to approve the date of June 25th and the use of Talleyrand Park for DBI's Friday in the Font between 5 and 9 p.m. and that the conditional approval includes Bellefonte Borough the right to cancel the program due to changes in state guidelines.
I will second that motion, Mr. Backwell.
Bill and Johnson. Discussion?
What was that date again, Randy? The 25th?
June 25th.
Thank you.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Okay, I'll make a second motion then to approve the date of July 30th with the closure of Howard Street between Allegheny and Spring Streets, again between 5 and 9 p.m. And again, on the conditional approval includes Bellefonte Borough the right to cancel the program due to changes in state guidelines.
I will second that motion. Johnson?
Okay. Blackwell and Johnson. Discussion?
I'd like to thank those folks. This sounds like a really great event, and the local businesses, especially Domino's, cooperated with these folks. I'm really excited about this, and I hope it continues for the borough.
Yeah, this is not the one that's on.
Yeah, East High Street.
This is not the one on East High Street.
This is
Okay.
westbound.
That one's later. That one's later.
Okay. All right, I still think it's a great event.
And I still appreciate it, Doug. Thanks.
Can I say something?
Yes,
I would just
go
like
ahead.
to take this moment to segue into thanking the Breidenballs for relatively new people in the community. I guess they've been here a couple of years, but they've jumped in with both feet to promote Bellefonte in any way they can. And I think it just needs to be recognized in the community.
I would just add, since you brought that up, Mayor, Mr. Breidenball is one of the volunteers that helped clear our waterfront walkway from snow removal with snow
No
removal.
kidding.
So, yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Yeah. So when
Thank you,
see
Mr. Breidenball.
Thank you.
When you see Breidenballs on the street, thank them. for
Yeah.
their community
Really
service.
appreciate your assistance for the borough.
You'll get a
Okay,
free
for
night,
relatives who want to move in?
Mr. Breidenball, you will get a free night stay in the local bed and breakfast.
I get that every night.
Lucky man.
And just to be clear, Ralph, I did do the snow maybe twice, but I know your people took care of it a few times before I could get down there, so I don't want to take full credit for that. But I appreciate you recognize that, and Tom, thanks. We enjoy living here, and enjoy a lot that goes on here, and want to participate where we can. So thanks.
Well, thanks for your service.
Any other discussion? Seeing none? Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll say it after the vote.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So moved. Okay, now, Don, go ahead.
There was one item, I don't think it made it into the packet, at least I didn't see it. It was a request from the county for 10 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in there.
It is, it wasn't in mine, I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
I didn't see it.
It's not on the agenda either, but I thought all I wanted to do was see it passed over to building and property for discussion.
That sounds good. Okay. Anything else for building and property? I guess not. Moving on to finance and government performance. Deb?
Okay, I met with the borough's finance director, Lori, last Tuesday, the 27th, for a really in-depth view of borough finances. And what she very clearly explained to me was just another piece of the puzzle. So instead of just looking at the monthly reports that we see with their council packets or looking at the completed annual budget, this gave me just a different perspective and view of borough finances. And thank you, Lori, for taking the time to meet with me. The PSAB will have the second of its two-part series on the American Rescue Plan on Thursday, May 20th at noon. And this should give us at least a little bit more information on the guidelines for the use of these funds. I know this isn't the only source of information on the guidelines, but as soon as we do have more detailed information, the Finance Committee should meet.
So you're saying to set the meeting after May 20th?
Right. I had heard at some point there might be information around the 10th of the month.
That's what I understood.
Right. But the PSEB had these two-part webinars on the rescue plan. The first one was basically what they didn't know. They were trying to answer questions, but at that point it was pretty vague about any kind of specific guidelines.
So Don or Ralph, can you set up a doodle to do something right after the 20th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Deb? Seeing none, we'll move on to Parks and Rec. Melissa?
The updates I'm giving are on events that we previously approved in our last meeting that were just given final approval by the committee. So we don't need to take action, but I want you as a council to be aware of what we decided. The senior dance from Bellefonte will be held Monday, May 31st. They've requested both the gazebo area and the Great Lawn. They're expecting less. The graduating class is 200. They're expecting much less than that. It will be volunteered by parents, and we felt as though they were taking the appropriate COVID precautions. The second thing that we talked about was the Rotary's Children's Fair, which we already previously discussed earlier in this meeting. The third item was a Central PA tasting trail. Their director was present. That will be June 20th. There will be 2 sessions from 12 to 3:30 and 4 till 7, I believe. They're expecting 300 to 400 tickets for each session and will have less than 20 vendors. They may also have a tent, but it's going to be a bring your own chair situation, so it's safer for the community. They don't have to wipe down tables. The fourth event that we spoke about was the YMC's volleyball pickup game that they're planning. It will be Tuesday and or Thursdays on the Great Lawn area of Talleyrand Park. They're expecting 15 to 20 people to play 4-on-4. It's going to be a rolling situation where some weeks they might not do it. Some weeks they may have multiple games. It just depends on people traveling for the summer and who's actually interested in playing. We approved that one, and that will be 6 to 8. And she also said that if someone else needs the space, they're fine to give it up. So all good there. After that, we spoke with Chief Weaver about an update on vandalism that happened previously last year, and just some ideas on how to do restitution or community service hours. That's mostly what we spoke about. Any questions on our meeting?
Just one additional update on the tasting trail with the tents. We talked to them about social distancing of the 300 guests that are coming in, and they agreed to do the dots like Summer Sounds does to show people how far apart it is that they need to set up their chairs.
Yep. If they have 300 people and 20 tents, they're thinking that people will have enough space. If there's a line, they can just go to another tent. And the area can fit thousands of people. So even at 300 to 400 people, they're well within the 25% rate, which is actually up to 50 right now. So it should be fine.
Yeah, I think they've got a very good plan in place.
Yes, I agree. The second thing in your packet for me is approval of the final payment for Lycoming Supply, which is this the correct number, Don? $64,887.31.
Yes.
So that's a motion. Who's going to be seconding it?
I'll second it. Clayton.
Bosky and Clayton.
This is the final bill for the bridge, and it is fully completed. All the rail are in, and it looks absolutely wonderful.
Agreed. I was just on it the other day.
Gorgeous.
Yes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So moved. Anything else, Melissa?
I have nothing further.
One more item, Joanne, that I'd like to mention, and maybe Melissa could help me. With our 2019 CDBG funds, now that you've just obligated for approval to $64,887.31, we'll have a remaining balance of $8,395.14. I would like to see if council would consider entertaining a motion to transfer that from project cost to administration, and then we can draw it down and bring it back to our general fund.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
So that was Eden, and who was second?
Prendergast.
Okay, Eden and Prendergast. Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Good idea, Don.
Thank you.
So seeing nothing else for Park and Rec, John, Human Resources?
I'm going to bounce this over to Ralph
Sure.
for the
Myself and Don, in case I missed something, can fill it in real quick. Basically, we've completed the process of building a new team of leadership and management at the wastewater treatment plant. I would like to have them introduced at the next meeting. Our new person just started today, and tomorrow night's our authority meeting where they will be introduced there. So the meeting on the 17th will introduce our new team there. Today, the refuse openings that were posted closed, as well as the parking meter enforcement position, part-time position that is open. That also closed today. So we'll have to go through the applications received and then set up interviews. We've been working on a new contract with the union, which would start January 1st of 2022. In that process, there was an addendum talked about and discussed with council and the union. That addendum has been approved. So we're in a very good position to finalize the new contract with the union. I would say relatively soon, and then we will have that in place. And of course, we'll work with council to finish those details.
Do we have to have a motion to accept the addendum, or did we already do
If
that?
you would like, I'm not sure it's in the packet, but it was definitely exactly along the lines as discussed in executive session.
So could I have a motion to accept the addendum to the Public Works?
So
I'll
moved,
make-
Brackville.
I'll second that.
Brackville and Eaton. Okay.
I'm just taking a quick look here.
Wait a minute, we haven't had the vote.
And then you move too fast.
Right.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Now you can go.
Thank you. I was looking down my list. I think I got everything I had scribbled down. Is there anything you have, Dawn?
Nope, that covered it, Ralph.
We're good.
Thank you. Anything else, John?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to safety. Randy?
Okay, just have one item with the pertaining to the Safer Grant bid opening. The bids are for the marketing end of the project. This is our fire safer grant that's worth about $500,000. I think this would be the bigger take out of it right now, as we're really just getting this started after having to hold back a little bit from last year. So we're not going to be reading any numbers, but Dawn will read the three vendors. And I believe that, Joanne, you'll be sending this over to the committee for review.
Yes.
So Dawn.
Okay, the first vendor is that submitted a proposal is Blink. By the way, we have three. The second one is the name of the consulting firm is First Arriving. And the third proposal came from Letterpress Communications.
You say letter?
Letterpress Communications. This was First Arriving. And this is the one from Blink.
Okay.
And what does the third one look like since you showed the other two?
That was it right there, Blink.
What about the press?
You must have blinked and missed it.
Thank you.
You wanted to see the first one, Dawn, I think.
Oh, Letterpress.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So my question would be, Joanne, what timeline are we looking at? Do we need this information back by the next meeting in May?
Yes.
That would be, I think that's the goal, Randy.
Okay, great.
So let's go to the safety committee for review and recommendation.
I would recommend, this should go to Nick Caputo is the consultant the borough hired that's in charge of the whole Safer Grant, Joanne. So
Okay.
my recommendation would be Nick, Randy from the safety committee, maybe myself and Gary Lorv as a fire chief.
That sounds good. So it's an ad hoc committee.
Yeah. Dawn, will you set that meeting up or put a doodle out for people?
I'll get these out tomorrow to the committee, Randy, and then we'll schedule a time next week to meet.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have on safety.
Good. Thank you. Moving right along, Doug, water and sanitation.
Okay, coming up the 14th and 15th of May is the community-wide yard sale. And the following week of the week of 17th May to the 21st is bulk trash pickup week. And I just want to remind residents that there are no tires, batteries, or items that are too heavy for two men to lift to be put out at the curb. And there is no construction material, paint cans, hazardous waste. They cannot be picked up by borough staff. These pickup dates follow the same refuse schedule that you normally follow from your home. I think that covers that. Ralph, am I missing anything for pickup that shouldn't be?
You did good.
Okay.
I do have, Doug, I do have one question.
You got it. Well, how can I help you?
On Wednesdays is when that's brush and grass pickup. Will that be affected by this?
It will not that I know of.
I don't believe so, because that's when that's a day, a lower scheduled day for pickup, so we should be okay.
For
Okay.
refuse pickup, that's the lower day, but it is busy for grass pickup.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me just make sure. Oh, the other thing is a lot of times people stack their riffraff in cardboard boxes and set them out at the curb maybe a night or two before the actual pickup. If rain is predicted and those boxes become wet, our borough staff pick them up and they fall apart. That's something we don't want to happen. So if you do place things at the curb in a cardboard box and rain is predicted, could you please cover it with a tarp or something to try to protect them from getting wet? Because the borough staff tries to pick it up and the boxes fall apart. They spend a lot of time picking up a whole bunch of stuff that they really shouldn't be spending their time on picking up. So if it's going to rain, cover your stuff if you can with a tarp so that the boxes don't fall apart when these guys pick up the riffraff. And tomorrow night we have an authority meeting at 6 o'clock. And as Mr. Stewart stated, we'll be introduced to the new, I think, assistant superintendent, which I've been introduced to her. Very, very well qualified person. And it was a difficult decision for borough staff to fill that position, but I think they made the right choice. I think that's it.
Any questions for Doug? Seeing none, we'll move on to streets. Mary?
So we met on the 29th and we had a longer than usual meeting, I think. I haven't been here long enough to know what usual is, but that was the impression that I got. So the first thing was something that came up earlier, the closing of East High Street up by Domino's Pizza, requested for the final Friday or whatever they're calling it for EI. There's going to be a band. I think there's going to be I don't think there's going to be food trucks, but they're going to close that street off. Domino's is participating with us. They've agreed to that. They've figured out how to use their back door and for deliveries and everything. So the Streets Committee recommends that to approve the DBI request to close East High Street up to Domino's on May 28th from 5 to 9. And we need council approval.
So that's a motion. I'll need a second.
I'll second it.
Abbott and Prendergast.
The second.
Wait a minute. You're jumping the gun too.
I took my lessons from Ralph tonight.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So moved. Now you can go ahead.
Okay, now I can go ahead. The thing we that took up the bulk of our meeting is the discussion of the crosswalks down by the Diamond, by the courthouse, and you know the push and the pull is between, you know, we want to do something as soon as possible to make that area as safe as possible now, and not keep waiting for the next piece of information or whatever, but then also not wanting to spend money on something that we may end up having to undo down the line. So, you know, we keep coming back to the idea of a roundabout at that location, not immediately, but you know, thinking of that as something that we're moving towards in the next few years. And so we had been, you know, the discussion had been about having those the stamped concrete crosswalks. But then the concern was if we put in those expensive stamped concrete crosswalks and then they need to be in a slightly different place because of the, you know, if we do move forward with the roundabout, then will we have wasted that money? Since you know, we're looking at these, you know, the thick the thick inserts that, you know, that won't wear down quickly, but then if we end up needing to you know, overlay them with the stuff for the roundabout. So we are now working with the Pennoni Engineering, and they're going to look for us in the next couple of weeks with some affordable short-term solutions that maybe we're not going to do the stamped concrete right now until we know for sure what the plan is going forward. But what can we do right now to make that area safer this summer? Not, you know, not planning it for next summer or whatever, but what can we do now that that we then don't have to undo a couple of years from now? So there was a lot of discussion. So is anybody else who was in that meeting want to chime in and kind of fill in any of the gaps that I'm leaving?
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, let me, so for the short term, what we're looking at doing is painted lines from one crosswalk to another, where it comes out around the curve. Like if you're on Allegheny going to turn down West High, that line will come out a little bit farther where you have to make a wider turn, which gives you a better visual at the first crosswalk as well as the lower crosswalk in that area. That'll happen at all 6 crosswalks. Any turn being made to the right is going to be a wider turn based on the line. And there's also going to be delineals in there to also show where that line would be. And that'll basically be used for the study to see how successful that is. And then at that point, and that's all we're going to be doing is painting and delineals. It's pretty inexpensive to put that in, but it can be as temporary as we need it to be. And then we talked about looking, you know, once on a long term, we talked about several different options. And during the discussion at that meeting, we decided, well, you know, we've been looking at roundabouts. Let's put that as the priority and see what comes out of it. And then we need to change this another option. We have that availability to also do that. And then as far as the stamped asphalt, that would be the center of the crosswalk or the crosswalk. Let's just call it the crosswalk. We're holding off on doing any of that work until we know exactly where the locations of the crosswalks will end up.
Yes,
but they will all be painted this summer as far as the lineage.
Right. The other thing that we discussed in that meeting was that the parking spaces in front of the brownstone would be eliminated with and possibly do some landscaping there to help improve. Because as you saw in one of the letters earlier this evening, having those parking spaces have been a danger for people coming around that corner. We also talked about the possibility of moving possibly 2 of the parking spaces on the other side of High Street. Okay, now Doug.
Oh, thanks, Joanne. I'm going to put Ralph and Dawn on the spot, or anybody else on council, in regard to maybe helping the public out in understanding what's been discussed. Can anybody bring up and share with us the street view from Google so we could actually use a cursor and show that to the public? I don't have I can't do it, or I would.
I can do it. I can do it for you, Doug. Give me one sec.
If you would put that as a screen share, then maybe we could use the cursor, and Randy or Mary or Joanne or myself, Randy, it might be helpful for the public to see exactly what you described. So that was my comment. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Not a problem. I do love to Google.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
that's it.
Oh,
So I believe you're talking about running white lines around here, Randy?
Correct. So that's what I'm saying. They'll come out a little bit wider than even you can bring your cursor out a little bit more, right about to there.
Okay. And then over here.
Same thing on, well, yeah, across the street that way, the same thing. And then in front of Confer's. And then over on from Allegheny to East High. So what that does, it helps calm traffic down, slow it down without stopping it, unless there's a pedestrian in there. And the idea of it making a wider turn, again, gives better visibility. And then we'll also, once that happens and we do the study, we'll also look at the curb out and how far out that curb could come in order to maintain that turn for all types of vehicles. We can't make it too narrow that our emergency vehicles can't get through them. So that's some of the things we're looking at through the study. But that's the main plan right now. Hopefully that we can get going for this summer and have in place.
very good. I think that'll work.
Randy and Mary and Joanne, did we decide for the crosswalk in front of Confer's Jewelers to reduce that to a straight across crosswalk and not an angled one?
Konami is going to be looking at that and give us a recommendation at the next meeting.
And at this time, we are going to eliminate the 4 spaces at the brownstone, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and not to belabor this, but we did chat about not eliminating the 3 spaces on the opposite side. I think for a balance that should be reinstated as no parking too. And something else I was thinking, Dawn, you helped me out on that. Landscaping and something else we chatted about. Do you recall, Dawn? To even that out on both sides.
Outdoor seating for the restaurant.
Right. Instead of the parking spaces, we could create some outdoor seating for the restaurant that's located right beside it. So I know at the committee meeting, we discussed keeping those 15 minutes or those pickup spaces. In a conversation I had with Don, I suggested with his help, maybe moving those spaces if needed in the future out in front of the Brockhoff building. We already have one there, I think, for the for Andy's Lou's restaurant. So we might put 2 there instead of just 1. But I think Dawn's idea of adding a picnic space would balance that. And we would still have the pickup parking spaces, but they would be located on Allegheny Street.
I love that idea. The only question I have is with these, because of the way the sidewalks are, and on the east side of Allegheny Street, the crosswalk would be almost in front of the Brockhoff. So, and Randy was talking about having that bump out go all the way over to the Barker Hall. I'm not
I think-
sure at this point how we can fit the second one in, but that's something we can look at.
I think that should be discussed in the committee with the engineer, but I really like the idea of balancing the two on each side and creating that dining space. I think that, and you know what, that also would help alleviate people illegally depositing items at the Face Center on the weekends. So
Listen, we're getting into the weeds of this thing, and I
I know.
appreciate it. I
I
appreciate
know.
the thoughts, but
I know.
that's why we're going to have a study. That's why we have
Yeah.
Panini in here, and that's what we need to.
Gotcha. I got you.
Mike, did you have something to say?
It's just that I'm starting to get feedback from some of the non-restaurant shop owners about the parking, reserved parking, and apparently it's causing some issues with parking for other people's clientele. So that's just, that's for another department, but just thought I'd bring it up.
Mike, could you do Ralph and I a favor? Please have whomever you're talking to call us so we know what the issues are, and we'll bring it up with the committee.
Not a problem. I can do that.
Right. Okay, Mary, you want to continue?
Yeah, so then the sidewalk ordinance, it's in the packet. And basically it's, we're just recommending some changes of how things are phrased in there. And the one change I think that needs to be approved is recommend that if a property owner outside of the historic district wants to use a different kind of material that's not outlined in that packet, then they need to get that approved by the Bellefonte administration. They don't need to come to us, they don't need to come to Harb, but they do need to get approval for anything that's not, any material that's not outlined in the packet.
So what for the public, what Mary is talking about is we're revising the sidewalk ordinance. It was help with Carrie Brooks, who did the heavy lifting and getting the changes made. The reasons they needed to be changed is there were some things in there that made it hard for him to actually write the letters and do the enforcement. So he helped rewrite it so that there were the specifics in there that were needed in order for him to do his job. And in the process, what Mary is talking about is we had a discussion last Thursday about who should be handling sidewalks outside of the Harb district. And we felt that would be much easier and more efficient if we had the administration handle those. So we changed the recommendation that Harry had made for it to go to council to have it just to go through administrative approval. And that being said, why don't we have a motion to advertise?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, can I? Okay. I'll second the motion, then we'll have it discussed. Yeah.
Okay. So that was Prendergast and Eaton.
Yeah.
Okay, discussion.
The question I have is, what is PennDOT standard Portland cement?
I believe that's in the further, I think it's further down in the ordinance where it's got a definition of Portland cement or a description.
Yep,
Towards
it
the end.
says specifications for Portland cement. And then it says PennDOT, Aaron trained Portland cement, which meets the current PennDOT standard. I spent a couple hours trying to find that on the web, and I can't find a PennDOT standard for Portland cement concrete.
Don, I think that may have been referring to the pounds per square inch number. It's either 3,000 or 3,500. It's the number we had in the previous ordinance, and then through committee work, the number was taken out because they felt that PennDOT could change their standards, and if they do, we don't have to go back and change the ordinance. That's why it was written that way.
We just need to put in what that ordinance or that standard is, a reference number.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, you can't find it.
That's why we need to get all the PennDOT and find out what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a web search, there's no, that returns nothing to you.
Well, I know from working at Ferguson that there is one. I just don't know where you'd find it.
What I suggest is we advertise, and of course, you can modify the draft right up till you vote on it with a minor change like we're talking about. So we can get the proper PennDOT publication that has the spec in it and reference that publication between now and when the council decides to act on the ordinance.
Okay. I mean, I'm okay with taking that approach, Ralph, but as I'm saying, what it states there doesn't specify anything.
Well,
I mean, I can't, if you do a web search for PennDOT Portland cement concrete, there is nothing that comes back as that.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the proper publication. That's what PennDOT uses, publication number such and such.
Right.
And then we'll list that in the ordinance. What we're trying not to do is list the exact PSI, pounds per square inch number in case that changes.
And you're correct that it has changed. And so I agree that I agree with that. So putting in the document number is the correct thing, and that's good.
Yep, we'll locate that and have it in the draft. Again, that can be changed right up prior to your vote on that draft.
Okay. I'm good then.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, can we move to a vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. So we'll have advertise it, and we'll have public comment and a vote at the next meeting.
Okay, and then the last thing is street paving. The committee recommends that council approve the paving schedule as listed under the control of Bellefonte Streets Manager, and recommend, and maybe these are two separate things, I don't know, recommends accepting the low bid offered by Glenn Hawbecker.
So that's a single motion to accept the Glenn Hawbecker bid with modifications for reduction in price by the streets manager.
Second.
So that's Abbott and Johnson. Discussion?
My question in regard to the project is, Dawn, we asked to check on that irregularity in the bidding. Did you by chance happen to speak with those folks? It seemed like it was a little bit under, I'm perfectly happy to accept it as it is. We asked the question of, was there an error? And I wondered if you ever got a response or around to checking that out. If I'm fine if you did or didn't. I just was asking.
Didn't have to, Doug. When we went back and looked at the numbers, I think the numbers that we looked at that day didn't include the 22,000 for the paving. It was the different that I think what was being referred to was a difference in milling of McAllister Street versus the other street. Talking to our public works superintendent, we just tend to think because there's a certain company that's probably not getting any state bids right now, maybe their pencil was a little bit sharper this time around. So
okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that question.
Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. Anything else for streets? Seeing none?
I have something, Joanne, I have
Oh,
something. I
okay.
think it might be property though. Well, anyhow, I'll bring it up. On this weekend, and I have to admit, I haven't used the kiosk parking lot. I usually park on the street. But I was driving by the one by Bonfato's, and a person was putting coins or information into the kiosk. And I said, it's free parking today. And her response was, oh, I didn't realize that, I'm from out of town. And I said, is there any signage that has parking enforcement hours? And she said, I didn't notice any. So it brought my attention to, well, I better take a look. So I didn't see any parking enforcement hours. Now, maybe my ignorance is showing up here, but I'm going to ask Dawn and Ralph if we have hours of enforcement posted at each community lot.
Good point, Doug. I don't remember seeing any either, and I go to one often.
I thought we did.
I never.
I can double check that.
Information. Like I just always wondered if it was sort of on purpose to maybe get people to put money in when they didn't need to. But it's not just Bellefonte. Anywhere I go, I'm like, well, is it now? Is it Sunday? Is it after 5? Is it, what? When are the hours? And I can never find them in any lot that I go to.
Well,
we have it, Doug. I know every individual meter on the street, it's there on the meter. If we do not have signs as far as I know, but I think it might be in the kiosk, but we'll check. And if not, we can have some signs made for the municipal lots.
Is the T2 parking thing signs that are in the process of being made? Does that include that kind of hours on it? The ones that we approved?
The T2 touchless parking, but we're still working on that, Joanne. We're not quite there yet. But like I said, the on-street individual parking meters has the time and the days right inside the meter. You can, if you look, you can see it.
Yeah, I know that one. I looked at her receipt and there was no enforcement hours on it. And she said, well, there's a donation to the borough, and she was happy to do it. But I really believe we need enforcement hours posted on each of those lots if they're not already there. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll even see if I can get a lot of times the programmers that can program them into the kiosks. So it'll be on like the front, the screen.
That sounds like a good idea. Also, it's less costly to us.
A physical sign, I think, might be more helpful.
I don't know.
We'll check on that. We can, maybe they need reposition, but we'll check that out.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Doug. Okay, so now can we do anything else? Okay, Mike, energy and environment.
All right, well, we've got a committee meeting coming up on Wednesday, the 5th. We also have, the agenda's kind of fuzzy at the moment, but I have those drive electric handouts in the packet. There's a note here that says ICLEA meeting week on April 22nd, and I'm not.
Okay, you missed that, so I can handle that one.
I would hope, because I did not see it. I didn't see an invitation or.
Okay. We met Don, myself, and Mary, I think it was Mary, met with the representative from ICLEI last week to get introduced. His name is Eli Udall. And we talked about what the program looks like and how the cohort training program will go forth. And he will be coming to the meeting on May 5th to discuss that. As part of his meeting, he said that every council member, employee, and community member may sign up through the borough account to access the information available on climate action through the borough's membership. And it wouldn't cost anybody anything because we have a borough-wide membership. We have also been accepted into the cohort training program that was confirmed on Tuesday of last week. The training includes 10 sessions from 2 to 3 p.m. on multiple Tuesdays between May 18th and November 16th. Council members, the community, and borough staff may participate in both signing up for an online account with ICLEI and if interested, can take part of the training. If you're interested in either one of these, contact Don for the times and links to sign up for the ICLEI access and for the trainings.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's all I have.
Okay. So anything else for energy environment?
There's a note about the crematorium issue that was brought up at the last council meeting. It's in your packet. I can summarize it if you would like.
If you would, that would be good. I did read that.
As you recall, we had a member of the public voice a complaint about the Wetzler Funeral Home and odors coming from at that point in time, a recent cremation that had taken place, I believe that past weekend. Anyway, following the last council meeting, I did get in touch with DEP as I said I would, as well as Chief Gary Moore of the Bellefonte Fire Department, as well as Walter Snyder, the director of the code office, regarding the issue of Wetzlers and potential pollution, potential fire danger, potential violation of whatever permit they may have or would have in place. And this email summarizes my response to the resident that was at the last council meeting. Basically, it says, anybody can file a complaint about air pollution. We are in the Williamsport Regional Office jurisdiction. A complaint can be received 24/7. They have an answering machine. The person that checks it her name is Ruth. The number is area code 1-570-327-3564. When you leave a message, please leave as many details of the incident as you have. The time, date, all that, what's happening, so that they have proper details and facts to follow up on. My conversation was with an Andrea Ryder, R-Y-D-E-R, who is with DEP, and she told me that the Wetzler's facility is inspected annually. The permit that they have does not contain a maximum person size. And what we gathered was it was just a rumor of the person size that was talked about, mentioned on that during the incident. It really was not factual about the size of the person that was mentioned. Let me see here. They mentioned a couple of things. The furnace, the hotter it burns is the better. It burns all the particulate matter, which is better. And they said there is an allowance for some smoke in the permit. They use percentages, but I don't have them written down. The chamber that burns must burn at least 1800 degrees or higher. And again, the hotter, the better. Flame is actually preferred because that means it's burning hot. So that's pretty much where I left off with the DEP person, this Andrea Ryder. Do you have a question, John?
But flame in the flue or flame in the chamber?
Well, I talked about that. They said flame above the flue was okay. They didn't have a problem with that. And then of course they talked about the chamber of the, I'm guessing the flue, but I explained that the flames were 4 and 5 feet higher than the flue. They didn't see that as a problem at all. And when I actually followed up with Mr. Wetzler through a phone conversation, they said, you know, I think normally it burns, but they did the cremation in the evening because they had a service the next day. Ordinarily, they don't do that in the evening, which means the flame is not as visible, you know, as it would be at night. Back to the flame. Gary Moore, the fire chief, told me, and this is what he said, he stated that they did report to the scene, they checked the scene, they did not feel that there was any danger to surrounding buildings, and determined that there was really no problem with the flue. So I believe that was the indication. They didn't feel that there was a fire danger to the historic buildings. That's what was reported back to me. So make a long story short, you know, if someone has a complaint in the future, call the PA DEP person at that number I provided. We'll keep this here as well, but they will take complaints in the future. The place is inspected annually. They didn't find any major problems based on what I was describing, but they didn't feel that there was a permit violation. However, I believe it'll be checked out.
More than that, we can't ask.
Yeah, that at this point in time, that's where we're at.
All right, Ralph, thanks for checking that out for us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else?
That's all for now.
Okay, we'll move on to Office of Community Affairs.
All right. Well, we did not have a planning meeting between the last council meeting and this meeting. We may have one next week. For HARB items, there's several listed for recommending a certificate of appropriateness. Those are 413 West High Street, a parapet wall repair, 102 East Bishop Street, clean and paint exterior, 234 West Curtin Street, installation of a wooden picket fence.
Could I have a motion to accept all three?
So moved, Brackbill.
Second, Prendergast.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Another item is tabled for more research. There's 2 administrative approvals listed. That's the end of the HARB report. Nuisance codes, again, that report is typically the second meeting of the month. So we'll have that at the next meeting. That's all I have at this point, unless there's some questions.
I have a quick question about fence permits. Is a permit required for any new fence installation anywhere in the borough?
I would say generally, yes, a zoning permit is required. You do not need a building permit until you're at 6 feet high in height with the fence.
So if a property owner is installing a new fence, they need a zoning permit?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, does that include replacements or just new?
We like to have one, even though it's a replacement, because we want to make sure it's appropriate, the same height, you know, it's not where it shouldn't be and those kinds of things. So the permit is for us to ensure even the new replacement is in compliance with our zoning regulations.
Okay, and that's available on the website?
Yes, and you know, I or our staff can help you if you would have a question.
Okay, a resident asked me about this, so thank
Sure.
you.
Sure.
Oh, Ralph, I got to ask just one more. It's probably pretty obvious. So we're talking just in the Harb, or is it throughout Bellefonte Borough for that permit?
It's everywhere.
Zoning, yeah, the zoning's for anywhere in the borough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So moving on.
That's all under community affairs, special committee reports. Do you want me to touch on that?
Well, just to say that we've had the nuisance code report at the next meeting. That's part of community affairs.
Well, I did that. So.
I can do the next couple if that's
okay.
First one, and Randy and Deb, if you can chime in, that would be helpful. CATA held a public hearing on April 20th with the proposed changes to the bus services. The three of us attended that public hearing. In attendance also was County Commissioner Mark Higgins, who basically backed up what we had been hearing. I would say that about half of the comments at that hearing came in from people who live or commute to or through Bellefonte. The comments were similar to what we have heard. People want both the CATA bus and the CATA Go to continue. If the CATA bus is to be limited, the public wants to see buses running during the morning and evening rush hours to and from State College. And they also want to see CATA Go to go all the way into State College as it currently does, because if it stops at the mall and there's only one bus from State College every 40 minutes to the mall, then people might miss their connection and thus their appointments or jobs start time for State College. There was also a couple of comments about people who take the CATA Go and who take the bus, who having to do transfers or to have those limited times would impact their ability to move from State College to Bellefonte. So there was that concern as well. CATA took in all of these comments and will be holding another public hearing in late May with the presentations of changes to the plans given. Randy or
as I recall, this wasn't a hearing. This was just a public meeting. It wasn't any kind of hearing. It was just to kind of go over what the changes were going to be. And I think the people who presented their concerns did so very well. I was disappointed to see CATA's response. I think it was a couple of days later. It might have been in the newspaper, where they felt that people were misinformed. Well, I thought what CATA had written down as to what they were doing was informing and correct as to what they were doing, and that's what these folks were concerned about. So I'm not quite sure why there was a feeling that people just were
I think I read that response from CATA, and I agree with you, Randy. It was people were complaining about was exactly what the letter
what was said.
Saying.
Yeah. I would just I think in the packet there was the notice from CATA that they're proposing or trying to have the actual public hearing on May 18th. That's primary day. And if
that'll cut down on attendance.
Yeah, it will. But in the letter, I think Luana was just saying that was a proposed date. They're trying to coordinate with all the municipalities involved. So if it's possible to not have it on primary date, that would be helpful.
I would make that. I'd make that recommendation as well.
I can do that, but that is the date that I received from Luana, May 18th at 6 p.m. So, but I'll get back to her on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think the consensus from the public is that we need public transportation between Bellefonte and State College, and the current proposal is basically isolating this community from the rest of the system, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Unless you're a car dealer.
Any other comments? Okay, then we'll move on to this borough branding and logo meeting. Nancy Perkins is on, so she wants to chime in after I tell what happened. We can do that. Last week, Nancy Perkins, she's the chair of the DBI Design Committee, met with Don, Ralph, Alyssa, and myself regarding requests to bring for use the borough logo. HRG Incorporated, they're the consultants who are finalizing the protocols for the use of the logo and trademarking it. They're still working on the documentation. After this meeting, administration agreed that until we had this protocol in place, we will not be sharing the logo with others for their use because of the legal ramifications. Then on Friday, we actually met with the consultants. The grant that is funding the wayfinding, signage, and logo project ends on June 30th. We will be meeting with HRG once every 2 weeks between now and then to work through and finalize this documentation. In addition, HRG will deliver what they call a book of business signs draft by May 30th to Ralph and Don and Gina. This is then to go to HARB for review at their first meeting in June to see what other changes might need to be done to meet the HARB guidelines, if any. An additional step that will need to be done before we can process requests for using the logo is getting the logo trademarked with the U.S. Trademark Association. Today, Don reviewed the paperwork required for getting the logo trademarked and has determined that the borough will need a solicitor who specializes in this area of the law to do this for us. Nancy estimated that this could cost about $3,000 based on her experience with trademarking some of her own designs. My question to council is, do we go forward with this solicitor now, or do we hold off on trademarking to later this year or next year when we can add this item to the budget?
I don't know, from previous discussions when we were talking about the budget, we know how tight it is. So I think we're going to have to wait and try to get it in for 2022.
Fortunately, I think Randy's right. Unless we could find it in some other pocket of funds, but otherwise, no. I think Randy's right.
Yeah, the other option, we could wait here another few months and just see how the real estate taxes are coming in. As you all know, we were very, very conservative this year. Probably to get this trademark, you're probably looking at a 4 to 6 month process. So could either wait till like later this year, or as you said, if you want, put it in the budget for next year, assuming that you all want to trademark the logo.
Nancy, you unmuted yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. There's various ways you can do this. Normally, the clients I've worked with have a legal department that handles it. And so, there's entities like LegalZoom and some of these other things that are cheaper, could be $1,800. After a time and we use the TM on the mark, then at some point we can migrate over to having a registered trademark. But also what we're looking at is some language that we can put in the manual that will describe the approval process. In order to use the logo, it needs to go through borough management. And it's really not, wasn't mine to let, so to speak. So it really is a borough intellectual property item. So, but we're still working through that. We want to just get some guidelines together. It's taking some time. We'll have that as soon as we can, but that's kind of the status at this point.
Any questions? Okay.
Ralph or Don, about when do you think we'll know numbers on the tax?
Well, they moved the deadline to May 17th. So, somewhere after that, we see who paid by then. Of course, it was a late period and so on. I would hope to say probably beginning of June, have an idea if we're on target or behind. So we'll try to look for something, maybe the second meeting in June.
Sounds like a plan.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Ralph? Your turn.
All right, let me take a look here. Well, I just have a note here, my report won't be till the next meeting, so.
Okay. So then we move on to old business.
All right, so as you know, we've been working on the short-term rental ordinance draft. We are waiting for comments from the borough solicitor. We did receive those. They were included in the packet, your informational council packet. So, and of course, we received letters as correspondence. I think looking forward, you have options, to move forward with the draft for a public hearing just to receive all comments. I think that would be healthy to do that. I think there's more than just more comments out there, pro and for and against, to gather. If you're going to make amendments to the draft, I think it would be healthy to capture those comments prior to starting on a new draft or modifying the draft. So, but you have the option. You can either stop here. You could set up, plan to set up a public hearing to receive all comments and then decide, any modifications or directions, maybe back to the planning commission for any changes that you're thinking of. Or you could advertise it and go that route as well.
Well, I sit down and I reviewed the proposed ordinance and I reviewed the bed and breakfast ordinance. And there's a lot of inequities between the two. And to me, I think what you're saying is correct, that we need to meet with the bed and breakfast and the Airbnbs and anybody else in this type of enterprise. I agree with Mr. Cifelli, I believe it was earlier in the meeting, that I think he's correct in what he's saying, that we need to bring some people to the table and talk about it so everybody can more or less get on the same page. When I look at the information from our legal people, they ended with saying how this ordinance is properly drafted and should be effective for the control of short-term rentals, and they end that by saying relieving such areas from traffic and parking congestion and late night disturbances that often come with short-term rental use seems unfair to me to come from legal advice. And I thought that was kind of inappropriate, because that's the kind of thing that folks are dealing with. And I think it shows the bad, the wrong side of what's going on here. I think myself, there's something here that says short-term rentals of a dwelling property or proportion thereof is viewed as an income-producing commercial enterprise not appropriate for residential zoning districts. Bed and breakfasts, I'm sure, are making a profit, or they probably wouldn't be in the business, and that's why I kind of feel like there needs to be the guidelines should be the same, no matter what they're doing. They're basically short-term. One, the bed and breakfast gets 45 total days per person, and 12 months, in a 12-month period per guest. They have 45 days. I'm sorry, it was 14 consecutive days per person, and then 45 days in any 12-month period. And then the short-term, what they're calling short-term rentals, only get 6 short-term rentals in a maximum of 30 days in 1 calendar year. However, it doesn't mention per person. So I'm not quite sure how that how that's what you determine there. It's confusing. So I really think it does need to be looked at, but I think we also need to have the people that are involved in these types of enterprises to have them at the table. I think some residents, whether it's got to be a full-blown public meeting or something, but I think it would be easier to have some type of ad hoc committee maybe to get things going and then kind of move from there. I mean, it may take a little bit longer, but I think it's worth the time.
I
Actually,
agree.
but
I agree
actually,
wholeheartedly with Randy. I've talked with a number of people and also with Fritz Smith up at the Visitors Bureau, and he's a little concerned about this movement. And I think that having both sides and some people that actually run these businesses and know what's going on are the ones that should work this out, not us just because we had a couple people complain about it, which is our usual knee-jerk reaction to things. So it's a big situation which is going to take some time, and it's important because it we want to look progressive, but we don't want to have any problems in doing so. So let's give this some time and work it out.
so I'm going to agree with both Randy and Mayor Wilson. We've received a few remarks or several remarks from people who like to see the short-term rentals throughout town, as well as from people who want them prohibited in the borough. We've got both sides of the issue. This evening, we heard from Mr. Cifelli and previously from Ms. Dropka, who run these types of businesses. We also received 2 pieces of correspondence this evening from 2 residents, the Calagos and Matthew Crater, supporting a short-term rental ordinance. At the end of last week, I met with Ms. Dropka regarding the proposed ordinance. She does not like the draft ordinance, but does want to see proper safety and consistent rental regulations for the safety of the community, as well as for her own business. She suggests, and I agree with her, that before advertising the ordinance, that the borough set up a ad hoc committee with representatives of bed and breakfast owners, short-term rental owners, and community members who have been impacted by the short-term rentals in the neighborhood, who'd be willing to sit down with the administration to make recommendations on changes to this proposed ordinance. She did tell me that she did this in College Township, and although she didn't like everything that was put into the ordinance that they passed, it was something that she felt that they all involved could live with. And then earlier this evening, Mr. Cifelli presented his recommendations and concurred with Ms. Dropka's request, where he states owners are willing to work with the borough management to move towards a solution. Ms. Dropka is willing to help us find the bed and breakfast and short-term rental representatives for this review. We, as the administration, could then ask the community members who have asked for us to create this ordinance to sit down with them to have a full-blown discussion to discuss this before we send it out for advertising and public review. This afternoon, I called Don and I asked him how we might be able to do this efficiently and who we might be able to involve. And he said he would think about it and get back to us this evening.
Very good.
So Don, can you answer who else we might want to have?
From Borough Council, Joanne, or from the
Borough Council and the Planning Commission. Who else do you think?
Yeah, I spoke with Ralph about that, and so I'm going to defer to Ralph because I'll let him just speak because he has a better feel for planning than I do.
Well, I would like to involve our code person, our planning person, our zoning person, our hard assistant here from the staff to set in and help with the process. I think it would be a good experience. When I talked with Dawn, I was thinking of the route of collecting the information. So if you feel an ad hoc committee does that, I certainly don't have a problem, but I I want to get all the factors put together so that we have a, a good draft, a well thought out draft, capturing all the ideas so that the idea of a public hearing traditionally is done. Let me just say this, it probably needs to be done anyway if you're changing any zoning requirements. So I was thinking collecting the data, and usually a public hearing is the best way to do that, and then take that data and give it to the ad hoc committee so they kind of know what they're working on. Otherwise, we, as you know, things sometimes die in committees, which we don't want to see that happen.
So what you're recommending, if I hear you correctly, is we have a motion to advertise a public hearing.
Yes, just to collect all the information, all the ideas and how to go forward. Take, obviously we capture that information and give it to the ad hoc committee and say, here, come up with a modified draft, and then then we're off to have it come back to council.
Okay, there's some legal time limits that we have if we do it that direction. Am I not correct?
No,
So,
we're still in the draft stage, just like the planning commission. The clock is not running for anything, and I think somewhere earlier it came up possibly for one of our discussions. We still issue rental housing permits for any existing B&Bs, any applications for a short-term rental that would come in. That would stay the same until an ordinance is changed, or it just stays the same until something different happens. So there's no clock running, so to speak.
okay, so the thing that we had when we went to Centercrest, where we had 60 days after we had the public hearing, we had to have a vote or we had to start over. That's the question I was asking.
Yeah, that's a little different. There is an advertised, that's when you have the draft worked out. You have the draft identified. You're still going to have a public hearing after council approves that draft.
So there would be two public hearings.
Yeah, then there's a clock running to approve that draft and all of that in a short time frame.
So Ralph, you would have that then stated as like an informational collection meeting type?
Yeah,
okay.
and what we do, Randy, if the council, I would suggest post the draft on our website, like as early as this week, saying we're accepting comments, preferably email or in writing, and then we're looking at setting a public hearing for input, additional input, people want to speak or whatever. We can set that up. We could also, if you're okay with this, post the legal comment, just because that's the information we're working from at this point. And that way, any citizen property owner can see what we're working from and offer any comments.
So what we would do, just so I know what to ask for, we would ask for a motion to advertise the current interim draft.
Right.
And would be with a posting of the interim draft, the solicitor's letter, and a date and time for the public comment period, requesting people to do written, if at all possible, because that makes it easier for the ad hoc committee.
Yes.
And then we would hold the informational hearing and then turn it over to the ad hoc committee that we're going to craft in the meantime, that would be made up of bed and breakfast, short-term rental people, and community people who would like to have a strong short-term rental, and get them together, look at the things, and come up with a new draft.
Yes, some type of stakeholder committee, yes, have that set up
with Gina
yes.
leading, mediating.
Yes.
Can I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Prendergast and Clayton. And we've already had two volunteers while we've been sitting here doing all of this, by the way.
I've been watching the comments.
And discussion? Yes, Randy.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be reviewed by any committee, but I would encourage, maybe have it in there somewhere to have people go and look at the current bed and breakfast ordinance of one page. It's one page, so it's easy reading, and kind of use that, to compare what this proposed ordinance is saying. Because I think that all has to come together.
I think posting that at the same time for informational purposes.
You could do that too. I didn't know if you want to go that far, but that's fine too.
We'll do it. We'll mark it as for information.
All right.
Other comments? Yes, Doug.
So we as council folks, we're going to let this ad hoc, we're going to let the public and this committee make recommendations. We as council members just have to sit back and listen to what's provided to us. We don't really need a council person on this committee. Is that correct?
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, don't put any biases in there. Let this be formed. Let the bed and breakfast people and the Airbnb folks, let them get together, appoint a couple people, have Gina, Ralph, and Dawn gather the information. There's no need for us to be involved until they come back to us with something that we can listen to.
Yes.
We don't have to stick our fingers into this. Let the committees do their job.
Oh, come on.
I just have received a request in the chat that once council members have completed their comments and questions, but member of the public would like to make a comment. So John, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I guess, Doug, your comments, bed and breakfast owners, Airbnb owners, but then also their neighbors who are property owners, residents, have to also be in that committee, and they have to have an equal voice, because there are going to be people that maybe they think that they're living in a zoned residential area, finding out that now they're in between two different business entities that are now officially recognized as doing business in their residential neighborhood. I want those residents to be sure and empowered to be part of this so that they can make their feelings known.
I agree 100%. And that's why we have a process for volunteers that they fill out an application. And I think we can go through that same process with this committee or this group of people that they can apply just as anybody else would. And hopefully you're right, John, a resident would do that. So that takes out any bias from council members. It puts it in the hands of the community. And then we take that information and consider it. So we have a committee or advertise for volunteers from the community, other than the ones that we've already decided upon from the borough staff, and the Airbnb folks and the B&B folks. They get together and say, okay, Bruce, Ms. Dropka, you two are our reps, and they meet with the guidance of Dawn and Ralph and Gina, and then they come back to us in the planning committee, and we hear what they've come up with, and then we make some decisions based on that and comments. There's no reason for us to be involved as a council until they have a plan.
I think it's counterproductive for our council to be involved in a citizen-generated ad hoc committee. It's just, we're throwing something in the soup that's unneeded. Yeah, I agree 100%, Doug.
As long as you advertise for volunteers and let people know that that opportunity's out there, so that the public as a whole is aware of it and can participate.
Well, maybe Mr. Morelli will put something in his newspaper that.
Yeah, not only that, John, but I
Yes.
think what's happened in the past is this ordinance was discussed by our planning committee, but it was never really publicized. And these folks all got caught blindsided when all of a sudden a ordinance was leaked and everybody says, what's going on? So part of it is us not getting the word out that it was being discussed. I know, Mr. Stewart, it's been discussed for a year and a half, but we just, you know, residents, stakeholders, if they don't know what's going on and we haven't publicized it, they don't get the opportunity to come into the Planning Commission or the Borough Council. I know we publish our agenda each meeting, and I'm pretty sure that the Planning Commission does the same. So residents do have a responsibility to check those websites. It's just, we have no newspaper reporter or social media at the planning commissions to get that word out. So I think we can go through the same process that we go through for other committees, and we need to stay out of it until a proposal is given to us.
I'm okay with the committee. I just, you just need to come up with an effective way to advertise for it.
We move on to the public.
I was just told by protocol that the public comments have to come at the end of the meeting. So I apologize for saying that they could come immediately after we finish from the council members. I was told by the administration to please hold off until the end of the meeting. Sorry. So the question I then have is, can we go ahead for a vote on this motion without that public comment?
Why don't you hold on the vote? If it's related,
They're both of them are related.
yeah, why don't you hold till we get down to new business or public comment?
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
I'll quickly go over old business. We did receive a letter from DEP in regard to Spring Better Walker's extension of the sewer line to Shiloh Road. Looks like the project's been approved, so it's there for your information. The sidewalk ordinance we already took care of. The crematorium, we already talked about that. Pedestrian light timing that was talked about at the last council meeting. I did get in touch with PennDOT. There's an email copy in your packet. They did not find any issues with the light, the timing. The timing does change. It is variable depending on time of day and what cycle the light is in when you push the pedestrian button. It could be at the end of the cycle, which means you only wait a few seconds. It could be at the beginning of the cycle, which means you wait a while. It could be in portions of the day, it's in sync with the light at high and spring. And during the rush hour, I believe it is, it's not in sync with that light. So there's a lot of factors that change the timing of the light. I just, ask you to be patient if you're going through that intersection, either as a driver or a pedestrian. It's, it's a very busy intersection. Yeah, the only other item of old business, and maybe this isn't the night to do this, but we talked about the dam project, Spring Creek mill race project there. Well, not necessarily mill race, but that project in the work session with the Penn State Sustainability class. My question is, there's discussion about maybe cutting off the water and so on. Are we still going to pursue possibly moving bridge funds? Is that still something that you want to explore? Because that's where we left off exploring it. There at West High Street, where there is a PennDOT bridge that crosses High Street right in front of the former, I call it the Boss Cano store, but it's My Buzz Cafe. Are we still going
What did you find out?
Well, I'm asking, I want to pursue that with PennDOT. I want to make sure we're still interested in see if we can transfer the funds and all that, which would, eventually it's going to mean cutting off the water flow underneath Talleyrand Park and into Mill Race. Are you still open to that? I'm checking.
We don't have any information yet. You haven't given us information to go by yet.
Well, I'm asking you if we can move the funds, even if we, the only way we would do it, obviously, we can move the funds. I'm asking, is council open to cutting off the water flow that currently goes down the Mill Race? If you're not.
Ralph, I thought what our discussion was for you to find out what the possibilities of that are, to bring that back, and then we would have that discussion about cutting it off. It's not the other way around.
I'm just asking, obviously we had the presentation this evening, so I just want to make sure we're still okay with exploring those options.
Go for it.
Yes, John.
Ralph, that there's nothing exclusive if as Mike discussed in the meeting, if we decide to have that water feature would be between the where this bridge work would be and the Gamble Mill, because that's the only exposed area where you would have any water.
Yes.
And if we need to get some water in there, there's I'm pretty sure I could even give you the money for the pump to pump the water out of Spring Creek to fill up that little water feature in there. Yeah, I think you have to take a look at that bridge.
All right, good.
So yes,
just want to make sure. I know a very, very good presentation. Just wanted to make sure we're still heading down the right path.
Yeah, I think you have to explore that option with PennDOT, because we don't know what all has to happen if they do that bridge repair.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on to new business.
We did have scheduled the review of the final draft of the strategic management plan. Unfortunately, we had to cancel due to some illness, and we're looking at a new date to reschedule that. Dawn and I, as staff, talked about this. We don't think the final review should take very long. Ideally, we would schedule that in a work session and then have the vote on the final draft in the following council meeting. We could just work to set that up at an upcoming meeting that allows for that time.
I looked at our to-do list, and if you're talking the next couple of weeks, we have May 17th and June 21st that do not have work session items.
Okay.
The June 7th one does have a work session item already.
Okay, well, we'll try one of those 2 dates and see if we can get that scheduled. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just looking at, obviously people are getting shots, which is great. Center County's over 30% in getting shots. Some of our neighbors are actually ahead of us in opening offices and all of that, and possibly meeting in as maybe their council rooms are bigger. But I want to start the conversation about returning to either hybrid meetings or that kind of thing. I think we're going to see that in our other meetings, like the authority meetings and so on, probably starting in June. And wanted to talk to council about your type of time frame, or if you want to talk as a committee or what have you about how we do it. Our council room is a little bit smaller, but depending on how many people showed up, we could make it work.
Ralph, when you're talking about hybrid, couldn't you still have council in the meeting chambers, but also still do virtual for anybody who wants to join the meeting from the public? I mean, is that what you're talking about for hybrid?
Yes, yeah, something like that. Even council members themselves, we could figure out how that would work. But yes, they could be some could be remote, and some could be here in the building.
Well, that seems to make the most sense to me at this point. To
agree.
warm up to it a little bit, because some people, I'm sure there's people here on the screen that might not want to come to a public, to a meeting yet.
Sure.
I agree,
It's
Randy.
going to be hard to wear a mask for 5 hours. I don't know how people do it at work, but.
So, do you want to discuss this? I can discuss it with our council president. We can come back with some ideas. How would you like to proceed?
Come back with some ideas and let us choose.
All right, good.
But I'm with Randy, and for the time being, I'd prefer to not be in the chamber.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we consider this as possibly, in the future, especially for like younger people that not retirement age, that whatever we come up with, make it possible so that people can attend these meetings that by Zoom is a typical feature, not some anomaly.
I think we need some help at the state level to change, the policies and that type of thing. But I think we're headed in the right direction.
Okay.
I mean, you can be counted as a quorum and not be present and so on. I know we had some exceptions here, but I think we still want to clarify, make sure we're okay once we get past all the emergency orders and everything.
Okay. I just think back in a prior day that the Zoom would have made things a lot easier in my life when I was on travel or I was stuck up at work. I could have still attended meetings with council. So,
any other new business?
Just real quick, I don't have this on the agenda. I sent you some information about this police liability series and through the Boroughs Association webinar series. Some of us, I believe, sat in something very similar last year. I'd like you to take a look at that. We did put some funding in the budget for bringing on a consultant. I know the chief has talked about not using the funding and just adopting some similar policies from surrounding departments. I would like you to look at that and discuss this and let us know. And I always believe the more informed your decision is, or you are before making the decision, the better the outcome. So
one caveat to all of that, because of the sunshine law, we can't spread that back and forth between council members. It has to go through Ralph or Don.
That's not true. It's information. The information sessions you all could set in if you wanted to. You're allowed to.
That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about.
All right, sorry. I was speaking of the
information sentences. You're perfectly right. What I was talking about is once they've gone through that, then you said we should have a discussion. We can't have that discussion except in the public hearing under the sunshine law.
Absolutely.
That's what I was saying.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't mean it otherwise. I was talking about the webinar information. It's informational. And then, yes, some point in a public meeting, I want, asking for direction on which way you want to proceed in a public meeting. So.
Okay. Okay, we do have some public comments. Gina, Henry, you were the first to ask. So you need to unmute yourself.
All right, sorry about that. So I just give you some background, some history on myself. I am a Benner Township resident. I do not live in the Bellefonte Borough. I do operate an Airbnb out of my house. And so I do, to some degree, have a vested interest on what's going on in Benner, in the Bellefonte Borough, just because I think what happens in one area oftentimes has the ability to trickle down into nearby or townships. So I certainly want to hear what's going on, what the concerns are, and just stay in the loop as far as what's going on. So I'm more than happy to participate in that group that you guys want to, have spawn off to the side to talk about it between the Airbnb owners, the business owners, and the residents. And I absolutely agree that the neighbors need to be able to have their voice in all of this. You certainly want to understand the true concerns, understand what's really going out there, and the degree to which this is really prolific out there. That being said, I do have a bed and breakfast license within Benner Township. And with Airbnb, I don't know. Now, I know that I listened to your meeting last month, and I know you're using the word Airbnb very loosely. It's not just Airbnb. It could be VRBO. It could be rentmyhome.com or Craigslist for all that matters, right? I was writing down a few notes while you guys were having this meeting, but I guess a couple of things I just wanted to understand was, at last month's meeting, someone made the comment that, I forget the exact wording, but it was something to the effect of, well, you probably aren't aware of all the issues that are going on or the complaints that have happened. And my question would be, if you aren't aware, are they really as many as, sometimes it's a squeaky wheel. You got one or two people who complain a lot, and so they draw a lot of attention. There really aren't that many issues. I mean, when you consider how many rooms and how many homes are rented out, how many weeks of days of the year and weekends of the year, and you have 1 or 10 complaints. You have 10 complaints out of 10,000 rentals. That percentage becomes really, really low. So it would be interesting to actually know the numbers of complaints, and is it the same person complaining all the time? I know for myself that I have learned, some of it is a learning experience with Airbnbs. Now, I know that and I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time. I know that you guys, I've already been on this meeting for 2.5 hours, and you guys started before me. So I'm going to try and honor that and respect your time. Oh, shucks, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, I do have a vested interest in what's going on here. I'm more than happy to help. I don't know if I'm allowed to help because I'm not part of the Bellefonte Borough, but I do believe that I can come at this and try to get as much information from all sides and be a fair, somewhat party. I do know that when it comes to parties and things like that, this was great for me. I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. I actually only went back to work full time, literally the week before everything shut down for COVID. I got a job at Penn State because my oldest son started at Penn State back in the fall. I got a job there. That was my plan all along, to get 75% off tuition. I worked for 1 week in the offices, and I've been home ever since. But prior to that, being a stay-at-home mom, a lot of our income was from renting that basement. I was able to be a stay-at-home mom for 18 years because 12 of them was spent renting out the basement for football weekends, I do also know my situation is slightly different. I'm always on property. We're always here. We only rent out the basement. That's, 1,000 square foot basement down there that people can spread out in and do whatever. So it's not quite the same. I think your concerns are mainly for those people who vacate the properties and rent out the whole thing. But I also know that there have been times where we have had a rowdy group down there. We're right above them, and I've had to call them and say, hey, you guys need to shut it down. My neighbors, I can't have my neighbors complaining. There is an interest. I would think it's counterintuitive to think that the owners of these Airbnbs aren't aware or won't allow parties to happen constantly, because that is in many cases their bread and butter. They don't want their neighbors to be mad at them. The last thing I want is for my neighbors to be complaining and going to bigger councils and committees like you guys and complaining about me because, you know, if you're drawing attention to yourself, you very well could be out of that income, that you could be losing that. So the concern is, I'm just wanting to make sure that all parties are being looked at and all sides are being discussed. And it's not just one or two squeaky wheels that are making the major changes. And, you know, you guys are talking about making zoning changes, you know, for a couple of things, for a couple of complaints. I don't know how many complaints that is. Maybe it's more than a couple. Maybe it's just one or two homeowners that really don't care what their neighbors think, and they're just going to milk it for all they can for as long as they're able to, and they're going to mess it up for everyone else. So I appreciate the opportunity for you guys letting me speak tonight. I am more than happy and willing to participate and volunteer my time to help come to some sort of mutual agreement between all parties. And I'm not adverse to being fined. You know, I think there's a place for that sort of thing if you can't control your tenants, or, you know, because, especially with Airbnb, you can find these guys. There are things you can do if they're out of control. You can kick them out of your house, you know, in the middle of the night and say, hey, you're not welcome here anymore, and send them on their way. So anyways, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Gina. Lisa,
Sure.
Dropka, it's your turn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be very short. I want to thank you guys for giving us an opportunity to put this committee together. I really am pleased and I'm really happy. And I really think it's the best for Bellefonte. The one thing I'd like to ask is, could we have a few business people on the committee also? Because having people stay in Bellefonte and eat in Bellefonte and shop in Bellefonte is very important. We're spending all this money in advertising to get people to come to Bellefonte. So I think it would be good, if, with your permission, if we could have some business people on the committee also.
Good idea.
We could do
Can't see
that
why you
too.
can't invite anybody you want.
Okay, well, I wanted to make sure.
I would think we could make that request to DBI. Don, Ralph?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, because I think that all working together, we can make Bellefonte much better.
Yep.
Okay.
Good plan.
Any other comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No, wait.
Wait,
Wait, what?
oh, wait a minute, that's right. We still have the motion.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. You caught me this time.
That's all right.
So we have to go back to the motion about
Yes.
advertising an informational meeting and request for written comments while creating this ad hoc committee. And then I'll review, and once that review is done, with Gina being the mediator,
Yes.
if you want to call her, we'll then bring it back to council, but we will not be dealing with this issue until after that happens.
I'll make that motion.
We already made that motion. Now we just
Okay, well, now we gotta what? Vote?
got to vote.
Well, let's vote. All the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved.
All right.
May I ask where that will be advertised?
Well, we're going to look at the open dates. I don't have that. Watch our website. We'll put all that on our website. Try to get as much information out as possible.
Well,
Is that bellefonteborough.com or what is that?
Bellefonte.net. Bellefonte.net.
Well,
Well, I would even call TV 10 or Channel 6.
We do send out a public service announcement.
This is an important item, and I think they would be perfectly happy to come in and interview you in regard to creating this committee.
We do send out a public service announcement. I was speaking of where we're gathering input and all of that. Hopefully they run it or get the information out through their network as well.
is the zoning officer going to be our liaison?
Yes, I think so. That just works well with our staff. So yes.
Okay, That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. So I should reach out to her and give her my contact information?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa, for offering to help spearhead this from your
Thank you.
side, your side of the aisle.
Are you a business owner, Lisa?
Excuse me?
Are you a business owner? Are you one of
I'm
the-
not a business owner, but I have 6 Airbnbs
There you go.
in various counties in Bellefonte, College Township, and various other places.
So we need a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
I'll second
Prendergast
it.
and Clayton. Any dissension? Seeing none?
No.
We
Oh,
are
come on.
adjourned at 10:14 PM.
Thank you, everybody.